Welcome to our October 22nd, 2024 Town Council meeting. Roll call, please. Kelly.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Here.
Mayor Pallavi.
Here.
Councilmember Klostad.
Here.
And Councilmember Romack.
Here.
Thank you very much.
Great. And if everybody can please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag, United States. Liberty.
Thank you very much. We're going to move into public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on anything not on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes. You can come on up to the podium over here. Make sure the microphone light is green and state your name for the record, please. Don't everybody jump all at once. No public comment at all. Okay. No murmurs. Okay, we're doing it. We're closing public comment. Thank you very much. And we will move on to our presentations. We have 4, maybe 5 presentation and proclamations until we get to our major one. So I'm going to first ask Jessica Lanier to join me up at the podium over here, please. And this is going to be a proclamation for Veterans Day, presented to Jessica, who is the Veterans Services Specialist with the Nevada County Veterans Services Office. So whereas tens of millions of Americans have served in the armed forces of the United States during the past century, and whereas it is estimated that 10% of our region's residents are veterans, and the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining our freedoms and way of life. Whereas our veterans are brave and selfless individuals who, when duty called, willingly put themselves in harm's way to defend the lives and liberty of others. And whereas our veterans understand the important task before the American servicemen and women now keeping watch. And the town of Truckee would like to recognize the sacrifice of the families of veterans and active duty personnel. And whereas the town of Truckee will come together on November 11th at 11 a.m. at the Eagle Monument in Victory Plaza to recognize and celebrate our local veterans. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee, November 11th, 2024, as Veterans Day in the town of Truckee, and we encourage all Truckee residents to acknowledge and honor the contributions of our veterans to the principles of democracy, individual freedom, and human rights. Thank you. If you'd like to say anything, please do.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Truckee Town Council. It's my pleasure to accept the Town of Truckee's Veterans Day Proclamation on behalf of the Nevada County Veterans Services Office and all the veterans of Nevada County. The Nevada County Veterans Service Office assists over 10,000 veterans with obtaining benefits, with 811 of these veterans calling the town of Truckee home. Our office is dedicated to ensuring that every single one of those veterans receive benefits that they are entitled to. The first and third Friday of every month, I'm here at the Truckee Veterans Memorial Building on High Street, educating veterans on the benefits that they earn through their service. This spring, our office is working with the Reno VA Medical Center to host a Veterans Health and Wellness Fair. This will be an opportunity to educate the entire community on the benefits available to veterans and their spouses. It is important that on Veterans Day, we set goals that allow us to continue the focus of honoring veterans and serving our veterans throughout the year. After all, these are the people who raised their right hand and said, "Send me," to protect our freedoms, and the Nevada County Veterans Services Office is proud to serve them each and every day. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Kelly, quick reminder, it's open to the public on November 11th. We'll get started at 11 a.m. and there'll be a reception and lunch following, right?
Yeah, after the ceremony, we're planning about 12:15 up at Veterans Hall. There will be a free lunch to veterans and their families.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Joe Aguera, come on up. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, nice to see you. All right, we have a proclamation for Director Joe Aguera, who was first appointed to the Truckee Donner Public Utility District Board. Are you ready for the date? What do you know the date?
Something like
May
87.
May 30th, 1987, and has served continuously for more than 37 years. Whereas Director Aguera presided over major events such as consolidation of Donner Lake and Glenshire water systems into the TDPUD system, and whereas Director Aguera presided over the utility's transition to 60% renewable energy portfolio, helping to ensure a more sustainable and secure energy future for our community. And whereas Director Aguera worked diligently to maintain affordable rates for customers, pursuing capital projects to upgrade infrastructure, and endorsing adaptive financial planning and governance that allowed the TDPUD to weather economic recessions and supply chain challenges. And whereas, this is a crazy stat, Director Aguera attended over 450 TDPUD board meetings, reviewed and approved 37 operating budgets, and participated in numerous events in service to the community. And whereas, with 37 years of volunteer service as director on the TDPUD board, Director Aguera embodies the words of Winston Churchill: "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee in gratitude and appreciation to Joe for over 3 decades of service to the community as director on the Truckee Donner Public Utility District Board, in which Director Aguera has demonstrated commitment to service and modeled leadership with civility, kindness, and grace.
All right.
Let's turn that upside down.
Nice. What was that?
No, they're all standing.
Oh, right. All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
And this is a community service commendation. And I also was on the fire board for about 10 years. And also on the cemetery board. When I first came to Truckee, I had the mortuary here. And when I first came to Truckee, the first week, I wanted to go to the cemetery district board meeting because I want to know where the cemetery was and meet the folks that I'm going to be working for and everybody. And it was a 3-member board at that time, and they were short a member. So in that meeting, they made me a member of the board. And naturally, the supervisor appoints the directors there. And no elections, but I was there on the board for about 8 or 10 years. In fact, I'm still working with the cemetery up there. I've worked with the cemetery for 58 years, something like that. And so, what I wanted to do tonight is thank everybody for supporting me for all these years. Like the citation there says that I made it through 9 elections. and the first time I got on the board was I was appointed to the board. One of the directors retired, and I went and applied, and they made me a member. So since then, here I am. And I want to thank all my ratepayers and my taxpayers that supported me in all these years. And I just didn't realize that it was going into 37 years with a PUD. And I figured that this is a good time for me to kind of pull out. I've gotten old lately. And I don't know if I could go another 4 years with the PUD. And I figured that this is the year maybe to pull the plug. So thank you again for all you've done and supported me for all these years. Thank you. And thank you. Oh, back there. Okay, Dave.
Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
If anybody wants to make any comments, we'll open it up for public comment after we get through the next two more presentations. Do we have any members of the River Revitalization Steering Committee here tonight? I think we do. Come on up if you're a member of that. We have the next proclamation going to all of you. All right. Yeah. There we go. Okay, good. We got a couple. We got Vice Mayor Zabriskie too. There we go. Oh, we got a couple. All right. Yeah, if you're on any part of River Revitalization, anything, come on up. Action teams, the whole deal. Okay, so we're doing a proclamation for Extra Mile Day. Whereas the town of Truckee is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile in personal effort, volunteerism, and service. Whereas Truckee is a community which recognizes the efforts of its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Truckee community members have consistently volunteered tens of thousands of hours annually in service towards countless efforts, large and small. And whereas Truckee is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. Let's see how many times we could say community in this proclamation. Whereas the town of Truckee's River Revitalization Steering Committee and Action Team members embody the spirit of going the extra mile by volunteering countless hours working collaboratively toward restoring, reviving, and reimagining the Truckee River corridor. And whereas Truckee acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 550 Extra Mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November 1st, 2024. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that November 1st, 2024 is Extra Mile Day and urges each individual in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all of those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, or world a better place. Thank you all very much for your service. You've done amazing work. We heard about it all at the last board meeting. And if you have a president or a representative, your chair, thanks, Joan.
Thank you. I just
Say
want
a
to say
few words.
thank you very much, and it's been a very collaborative process with a lot of community members' involvement, and we appreciate that so much. Thanks for the recognition.
Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks for being here. Okay, one more proclamation. I need the entire IT division to come on up, including your fearless leader. He's not going to get out of this one. Come on, Chris. Come on over. Okay, so this is a proclamation for Cybersecurity Month. And we've got Connor Drews, Brett Clark. Just raise your hand so everybody knows who you guys are. Connor Drews, Brett Clark, Lillian Schnick, and Chris Hardy of the town's Information Technology Division. Whereas cybersecurity threats are becoming increasingly numerous and sophisticated, posing significant risks not only to our governmental systems, but also to the personal data and financial security of our residents. Whereas President Biden issued the 21st Proclamation for Cybersecurity Awareness Month on September 30th, 2024, urging local governments like Truckee's to strengthen digital defenses. And whereas raising awareness about current and emerging cybersecurity threats is essential for educating the public and ensuring these threats are taken seriously. And whereas promoting best practices encourages safe online behavior that protects both personal and organizational data, safeguarding our community as a whole, and building a culture of security instills a sense of responsibility in each person to participate in keeping themselves, their families, and the community safe from cyber threats. Whereas the town's information technology team has identified 4 key focus areas crucial for both local government agencies and residents in today's cyber threat landscape: phishing attack recognition and reporting, safe password use, security considerations when participating in remote work or online activities, and data protection and privacy. And whereas the IT team will provide weekly information and resources throughout the month of October to equip town staff and residents to combat cyber attacks. And whereas a new challenge coin has been created to recognize employees who demonstrate themselves as true cyber defenders and set an example for the entire community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that October 2024 is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we encourage all employees and residents to participate in activities, training, and awareness efforts designed to enhance our collective cybersecurity posture, protecting our homes, businesses, and community from cyber threats. Thank you very much to the town's IT division. On behalf of the IT division, Connor, go for it.
I don't have a speech prepared, but I want to thank everyone on behalf of the whole IT department. Chris, Lily, Brett, Logan, myself. We appreciate the support the town and the community gives us, and it's our privilege to be a resource for everyone and make sure we're all safe. Thank you all.
Anybody wanted to make any public comment on any of the presentations we've heard so far tonight? We'll open a quick public comment up if anybody would like to speak. Okay. Being none, I'll close public comment. Any council comments on any of the presentations so far? No. Great. Staff, you're good. Excellent. Okay, we're going to move into item 5.5. We have Becky Bucar, the Assistant Public Works Director, along with Lisa Madden, our Police Lieutenant, to present us with an update regarding etiquette and safety on multi-use trails.
Hello. Thanks for having us. My name is Lisa Madden. I'm a lieutenant with the Truckee Police Department, and this is Becky Bucar. She's the Assistant Public Works Director. We're going to go over trail etiquette and safety on trails update for 2024. So the lineup tonight, we're going to talk about the 10.21 municipal code update. That's vehicles on trails. Police department update, community survey, trail incident reporting tool, trail speed limit signs, trail stencils, centerline striping, trail maintenance, trail counts, bike month, and B-cycle. So there's a lot on our agenda tonight, but we'll go through it quickly. Just a reminder that we're talking about the Class 1 multi-use paths, which are your common Legacy Trail, Trout Creek, the lines that are in the black. So last year, September of 2023, we did really an overhaul of our Chapter 10.21 vehicles on trails. We defined what an alternative transportation device was, and also some reckless operation of those devices on our trails. We were looking for a way to make the trail safer for everyone, and so I'll go through a little bit of what we decided on that one. So for the police department, 10.21.050 is the reckless operation of alternative transportation devices. We have several subsections, but the biggest ones here are 15 miles per hour speed limit, which was included in the update. That's probably the biggest update we had here. We previously had operating recklessly, and we've defined a couple more subsections to that. We also included carrying passengers on alternative transportation devices that are not designed or equipped for that. And also included earplugs, headphones, or use of wireless devices being prohibited while using an alternative transportation device. So a little bit about the police department and what we've done this past year in regards to education and enforcement. So when we updated this municipal code with the 15 mile per hour speed limit, our traffic team integrated the multi-use trail into our traffic program. And so our traffic team spent about an average of an hour a day on the trails when they were on the zero motorcycle. We weren't always on the zero motorcycles, but when we were, it was part of our routine patrols. They had numerous positive contacts, not all of them documented, so it's very hard to look for stats for how many contacts we actually made, but all very positive. For the educational events that we did this year, we participated in bike rodeos. We also did some helmet giveaways. We had bike and pedestrian safety presentations at our local schools. We also had e-bike education at community events, primarily Truckee Thursdays, where we handed out bike bells and reflective bracelets for children and adults. Animal safety and education on the trails and events. Typically during Truckee Thursdays, we'd have an animal services person with us so that we could educate the community on animal picking up dog waste, leash etiquette, especially on the trails. We also had extra patrols on the trails by our volunteers, and they educated on animals, pedestrian safety, and bicycles. As you can see, there's our volunteer Joe in the bottom corner there passing out dog poop bags. So for enforcement, these numbers are for the entire town of Truckee, so not specific to the trails. But our bicycle citations in 2023 were 19 bike-specific citations that were issued. In 2024, it was up to 25 citations that were issued to date. We did write 2 written warnings for our municipal code. One was for written warning for speed, and one was for having a passenger on a device that was not able to hold a passenger. So our reported calls for service on the trails in 2024, we had 7 animal calls. Most of those were dogs at large without an owner. We had 3 disturbances, and 1 report was taken for that. And we also had a camping call. So a total of 11 calls for service on the Legacy Trail that were reported to the police department. To put this into a little bit of perspective, in 2024, to date, we've had 10,376 calls for service. So pretty minimal when we're looking at the entire town of Truckee. So we also conducted a community survey. We did this in 2023 when we were looking to update the municipal code, but we decided to do it again in 2024 to see if anything has changed. The difference was in 2023, we did it in June and July, and it was a month-and-a-half time frame. In 2024, we did it in September, so at the end of the season, and it was only for 2 weeks. But 2023, we had 259 respondents, and in 2024, we had 309 respondents. So I'm going to go through some of the data. Some of it's a little dry, but it's good information. We also did the survey in Spanish. In 2023, we had 3 respondents. In 2024, we had 2 respondents. So I've included that data as well. So you could see in 2023 and 2024, pretty similar numbers for primary uses for trails. We do see that there was an increase in commuting to and from town to shop, but the numbers are pretty similar. And for the Spanish, it was social activities, recreation, and walking dogs. So we asked a question about primary concerns, challenges, or barriers in English. You can see the differences from 2023 to 2024, fairly similar, but you could see that the speed of cyclists has increased. The lack of trail etiquette went down slightly, and then also our litter and dog waste also went down slightly. You can see in the other section that increased, and that other section was like a fill-in that you could put in. And so on this next slide, I broke down kind of some themes that we saw in those. So for the other section, it was access and pedestrian connectivity, e-bike safety concerns, unleashed dogs, parking and waste issues at trailheads, and then trail service conditions. And for the Spanish survey, it was speed of cyclists, dogs on the trail, and dog waste. And so another question we asked was, in 2023, we made some changes in response to public feedback. Please rank how effective you find each of the following. So for English, if you could see up on the top, if you can even read it, it says 15 miles per hour speed limit. And 28% said that it was not effective, 30% said somewhat not effective, 19% said effective, 19% said somewhat highly effective, and 2% said highly effective. In the Spanish version, 50% or one person said that it was less than effective, and then one person said it was somewhat highly effective. For the centerline striping, we see that 12% said somewhat effective, somewhat not effective, 39% said effective, and 30% said somewhat highly effective. For the Spanish version, it was 50% effective and 50% somewhat highly effective. For this trail stencils, we see that 26% is somewhat not effective, 32% is effective, and 22.45% is somewhat highly effective. And then for the Spanish version, it's somewhat not effective and effective. So obviously we'd like to see these numbers increase to where they're very effective on all these. And so that's what we're going to work for in the future, to see how we can get these numbers to change a little bit. So this question we asked was to list the top 3 improvements in addition to what we've already done that you'd like to see enhance your trail experience. So each respondent was able to write in their top 3 that they'd like to see. So what we did was we pulled the themes out of the top 3, and I'll go through those now. So the number 1 improvement, there was 216 respondents who wrote in, and it was dog control and leash law enforcement, sanitation facilities, trail safety and speed regulation, connectivity expansion, clear e-bike rules, and trail maintenance upkeep. For the number 2 improvement, we had 149 responses, and those responses were dog waste management, parallel trails for different user groups, increased patrols and enforcement of speed limits, leash laws, trail connectivity, and increased trail striping. And the last improvement, there was 101 responses, and it was trail connectivity, police speed enforcement, at-large dog enforcement, and increased signage and striping. So we did ask a question about additional comments, and this was an open-ended question, so these were also just summarized and broken down into bigger categories. So trail infrastructure and expansion, we had a lot of appreciation for the existing trails in our comments. They had a desire for more connections and maintenance. The safety and enforcement, they'd like to see some increased patrols for speed and helmet laws. User amenities, benches, secure bike parking, bathrooms, water fountains were all brought up. Dog waste and leash control, enforcement of off-leash dogs and dog waste. And then connectivity and community. It was mentioned that there's some gaps in our trail networks. So looking forward for the police department, we're going to look to increase our outreach efforts for bicycle safety. We're looking for some grants to assist us in pedestrian bicycle safety campaigns. We're looking to identify some other avenues to spread trail and bike safety information. So if anybody has any ideas, let me know. And then for our animal services, we're going to focus on education on animal laws and dog waste. For our enforcement, we're going to continue monitoring the trails. We're going to increase our enforcement on the trails for observed violations. And we're also going to focus on those speed, helmet, and animal violations when we see them. And then collaboration. We're going to collaborate with our town partners for trail etiquette campaigns. We're going to collaborate with regional partners to try and spread some messaging. And then we're going to continue to collaborate with the schools for some educational opportunities for our kids. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Becky.
Okay, thanks. So Lisa covered the bulk of the information, but I'm just going to kind of touch on a couple other items. So we have this trail incident reporting tool. We rolled this out last year. It's still available on our website. I think we have about a little over 40 responses at this point. So we're not getting a huge amount of information, but the point of this tool is to allow people, because there's not a way to collect this data, we have a very structured system on roadways where the town police department and CHP gather information and they can track collision data. We don't really have that for the trails. So we created this tool for people to be able to report incidents or even near misses. But you will see there on this map, there's definitely a higher amount of incidents on the Legacy Trail and Trout Creek Trail. And this is a little bit of a comparison between the different seasons. So on this upper chart here, where the large graph, the large bars are, that's summer 2023. The green represents the total incidents reported. The purple is the number involving e-bikes, and then the blue is number involving off-leash pets. And then in summer 2024, you can see those numbers went down. I'm not sure we can draw major conclusions from this, but it was just sort of interesting to look at. On the bottom graph, we're looking at injuries, minor injuries, near misses, and not reported. So again, summer 2023, we had a number of more minor, no injury, and near miss reports compared to summer 2024. In order for the police department to be able to enforce the speed limit sign, we did go and install a bunch of speed limit signs out on the trails. Our Riley Powers and our division put together this map, and our staff went out, trail staff went out and installed about 40 different signs. A picture here on the left-hand side. We went with a black and white regulatory type sign, but did add a note to watch for walkers and bikes and a thank you at the end to make it nice and polite. So those signs are out so that it should be clear to folks as they're entering trails whether there's a speed limit. Trail stencil program, we did that again this year. What's kind of fun about this year is we have other agencies, local, regional agencies that took on the program. So we have the South Lake Tahoe, North Tahoe Public Utility District, Tahoe City Public Utility District, and Washoe County included the program. I was just out on the East Shore Trail this weekend and saw a bunch of the stencils out there. So that's fun. And we did stencils on the Legacy Trail in 20 locations this year. And so that's one for each direction. So 20 locations means 40 stencils, 7 locations on Trout Creek Trail. And that was done with a combination of town folks and Truckee Trails Foundation folks and volunteers. When we were out on the trail, people did mention they enjoyed the stencils and were thankful for the work. Some of the messages had been spray painted over, but we were able to quickly go replace them. The beauty of this program is they are pretty easy to put out there, so we went out and added them again. Trail Centerline, we put this Trail Centerline on the Legacy Trail again this year. It's about approximately 5 miles of center line. I think from the graphs that Lisa showed earlier, you could see that they had a pretty high response on people thinking that was effective, like over 80% of the people thought it was effective. So we'll continue that next year, and we're considering including Trout Creek Trail because that's our next busiest trail in the town. On trail maintenance, we received a lot of comments this year about the cracks and the size of the cracks on the trails. And so this is our second year of doing trail maintenance or trail paving projects. So part of our paving and drainage project was to pave a bunch of trails. We ended up paving about 2.7 miles of trail this summer and then did crack repair an additional 0.6 as part of the contract for the paving and drainage. And then our facilities trails maintenance staff went out and did a bunch more crack repair. They focused on Trout Creek Trail, the Frishman Hollow Trail system out in Old Greenwood, and then also went out and did some spot locations just to get some of the worst cracks to prepare for winter operations. So I mean, we have 25 miles of trail that we maintain in the town now. So we can't get all the cracks in one season, but we are working on it, and I do expect we'll have another trail paving project in the budget for next year. This is maybe not related to safety, but data is always a good thing to have. So the graph on the right is actually some data that we collected using some portable trail counters that we've been using for years. We're able to move them around, count the number of people that use the trails at different locations, and they're pretty effective. We tried to keep one on the Legacy Trail by the East River Street Bridge as sort of a control point. But last year we bought a new trail counter, and when we kind of compared the data, we actually realized our new trail counter is much more accurate, and it also shows more people on the trail. So the graph on the left is just, and one of the things that we can pull out of it, you can see by day of the week when people are on the trail. No matter what day of the week it is, people are out there midday a lot. Saturdays and Sundays are busiest, not surprising. The graph on the right actually shows that the busiest trail is Legacy Trail, followed by Trout Creek Trail. This is a new thing that we can do with our counter, our new counter. We can differentiate between pedestrians and bicycles, which is pretty cool. What is interesting is on the bar chart, the pie chart on the left, 70% of the users are pedestrians. But when you look at over the year, in the winter months, the bike use goes way down, which would be expected, and the pedestrian use goes way up. Oh, am I out of time? I'll be quick. And then in the summer, the bike traffic actually increases and exceeds the pedestrian traffic for some of the months. So that's sort of interesting. And then this is just a compilation of all the users, bikes and peds. But I think this is interesting because if you correlate the peak days to different events, the Truckee Music Fest is that big peak there. We had over 1,700 people on the Legacy Trail. Second highest was 4th of July, not surprising. Third highest was Truckee Pride Week with the day that we had the Rainbow Run rock and roll event. So this is just interesting and good information to have. We are in the process of getting another one of those counters. The downside of these counters, you can't move them around. They're permanent, but we're going to put it on a Trout Creek Trail. We're going to try to pick a location that is good for measuring speed because the new counter will also measure speed. So just want to touch on Bike Month. That was another opportunity for us to do some education. We had some events. We had a Pledge to Bike Everywhere Day, Pledge for everyone to bike everywhere. 43 participants participated in that. A Bike Everywhere Day, we had about 30 participants. And then we had a bingo challenge. We had 18 participants. There was a bike kitchen. And then, again, there was that Bike Everywhere Day. And there was bike valet at a number of events throughout town this summer as well. And this is a quote from one of the people that participated. They basically said, until the Bike Month Challenge, I wasn't really biking much, but this got me out on the bike almost every day, and I'm keeping it up in July. And then just quickly, B-Cycle, just wanted to mention, we continued that program this summer. This is the number of trips and hours and carbon offset is up this year. We did have them out on the roads for a longer period. This is not the final numbers. I think that Danielle and Alfred plan to come back to you all later this year or early next year with the final numbers. One thing we were able to do, though, is put the 15 mile per hour reminder on all the e-bikes. And we were able to provide some of these stickers for some of the bike rental places in town, too, to also put those on to remind them of this 15 mile per hour speed limit. So with that, that's the information we have for you tonight, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you, Becky. And no, that was not us buzzing you, but if we had control of the buzzer up here, things would run smoother. I would just say that. Thank you. That was really a very thorough presentation. We appreciate it with all the talk about bike safety that we've been doing over the past couple of years. I think that's great to sort of see some of that in action. You guys, how long is your town manager report?
6 things, but they'll be very quick.
Okay, go for it. And then
Okay.
we'll open up for public comment and any council questions after that.
Great, thank you. Just a few events to announce. We have the ribbon cutting for West River Street Streetscape Project, Legacy Trail Phase 4A, and the new bridge across West River Street tomorrow, 4 o'clock. The ceremony will take place down at the South River Street parking lot, trailhead that's new. So we hope you can join us for that. On the 24th, on Thursday, actually, I'm sorry, it's tomorrow night after the ribbon cutting. You can come back up here to council chambers for a presentation by Dr. Hendrickson on the air they breathe. That's put on by the North Tahoe Citizens Climate Lobby. So look forward to that. That begins at 6 o'clock. On November 1st, we are collaborating with Nevada County Library and co-hosting Dia de los Muertos Fiesta. Sorry about that. My Spanish is not very good. That is Friday, November 1st, 4 to 5:45 at the Truckee Library. So there'll be a community altar making. Can bring a picture of a loved one that you've lost and enjoy that celebration and celebrate their presence in your life. And then lastly, November 11th, Veterans Day, we've covered that, but also a reminder that we are closed at Town Hall that day. But we will reconvene here on the 12th for a council meeting, and please remember to vote.
Great. Thank you. Dia de los Muertos.
I did it better before I was on.
No worries. You guys can pronounce the park, and we'll take care of some other stuff. Great. Those were the rest of our presentations. Any council member questions or comments on this side? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Was the number for the daily volume on Legacy Trail 633? Is that what it was?
So one of the graphs this is an example of where the newer counter is a little more accurate. But yes, it was 633 using our old counters, and that was from the previous year. And that was an average for the
Right.
year, yeah.
So that would be 230,000 people a year, and we only had 7 reported concerns to the police department?
They're calls for service, so
Calls
it's
for service.
they have to go above and beyond and actually call our dispatch center. So those are the calls for service.
Okay. That's a nice number, relatively speaking. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Henderson.
Oh, and I really like the signs. The speed limit signs, that was really well done. That is not an in-your-face speed limit. It tells you what it is, but it doesn't. Well, maybe that's why so many people are dissatisfied with the enforcement. They're just really good signs, I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. Quickly, are the B-cycle bikes actually, do they top out at 15 miles an hour?
I don't believe they do, but we just, I'm not sure we have the ability to change that, but we just reminding people that it's 15.
I guess if they're not, a question would be, could they be? And we might not have that answer now, but that's another lever we can pull beyond just a sticker as a form of education.
I can check with Alfred and Danielle about that.
Yeah, perfect. And then I know that you mentioned, sort of some more education, some more collaboration opportunities. But it seems like that 15-mile-per-hour speed limit generally isn't perceived by at least the survey respondents as very effective. So we have the signs now, of course. Are there any other ways to make that even more effective? So we're seeing some of those numbers look like the center line striping.
You know, it's so new that not a lot of people know about it. The signs did go up a little late in the season as well, and so we were a little behind the ball with the signs going up. And so really it is about education and being out there, and hopefully we can collaborate with people who use the trails, and, you know, have either ambassadors or our volunteers out there and just reminding people. But, you know, we're looking for fun ways to get people educated about it. You know, we don't want to pass out flyers and have them just along the trail. So we're looking for some unique ways that we can get to people.
Just an interesting data point. Last year in 2023, we had numerous calls and complaints come into the town and the police department about speeding. This year, I think we had one complaint come in, or chief, virtually no. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy between what we're seeing in the survey and what we actually receive for complaints. There's probably a number of reasons for that, maybe because we had officers out on the trails and there was some conversations there, but just another interesting data point.
Okay, great. Councilmember Romack.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the data, and it's exciting to see the trail counters and all that. I did just want to mention, Lieutenant Madden, you said any other ideas for outreach. Jen and I were at the League of California Cities conference last week, and I'll tell you more later. But we went to a session on e-bikes that the city of Irvine put on. And I know it's a larger city, but one thing they discussed is at the middle and high schools, in order to ride your e-bike to school, you have to pass a class and get like a parking pass for your e-bike. So it's kind of like an opportunity to ensure everybody's getting some instruction. So food for thought as you're collaborating with the schools. I thought that was a really interesting idea.
I have heard of that, and we did reach out to the school, and we are talking to them about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Manning, can you bring back the slide where the 4 categories that you guys are going to focus on?
This one?
Okay, yes, this works. So, well, actually, I think it's the one before this. There's a category for the types of violations, and is it a dangerous operation of alternative transportation device? Is that, what is that? What is defined as the dangerous operation of an alternative transportation device?
Are you talking about reckless operation?
Reckless, that's it.
Those are
Thank you.
the categories in our municipal code that we've outlined. So that includes the 15 mile per hour speed limit. The operating recklessly, there's different categories and it's A through H of the 10.21.050. And that includes driving under the influence or riding under the influence of an alternative transportation device, riding so recklessly, causing an accident because you are riding recklessly, those types of situations. But those are all outlined in our municipal code.
Okay, great. And then what would be considered a dog violation?
So a dog violation, those are tough. A dog has to be within voice control. There is no leash law. There is, at Regional Park, there is a leash law, but on the actual trail, there's not. So there is some misconceptions about that there is a leash law on the trail. There is not. So some education on that would be important. Some education on what voice control means is important, as well as dog waste and the importance of picking up your dog waste, because it is really bad for our environment. So just some education in those areas.
Yeah, clear. I think you're right. It's key to have clarification and education on that for both dog owners and non-dog owners, as there seems to be a lot of misconceptions out there. Okay, thank you.
With that, we'll open it up for public comment on any of the presentations we just heard about. Feel free to come on up if anybody has a public comment on any of those items. No? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close public comment on the presentations. I'm going to hand it back to Jen for one last piece of business, and then we'll move on to consent.
Great, thank you. I wanted to mention there's a new face at our table down here at the end. We have Steve Conway joining us for a few months, serving as interim administrative services director. So he will be, he probably won't be at every council meeting. It'll see when we have finance related items on, but wanted to thank Steve for joining us. He's been in local government for over 20 years, over 30 years. Okay. A very long time. And he brings a lot of knowledge to the table. So thank you for being with us. And
Yeah.
Thank you, town manager, and thank you, council, and thank you, community. Love this community, and glad to try to help out during the absence of the full-time director.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Welcome. With that, we're going to close out our presentations for the evening. We're going to move into our consent calendar. We have item 6.1, minutes of October 8th. 6.2, Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency Director Appointment. 6.3, reimbursement agreement with the Truckee River Watershed Council. 6.4, local partnership program grant applications for Reimagine Bridge Street. 6.5, Village at Palisades Tahoe specific plan and final revised environmental impact report comment letter. Would any member of council like to pull anything from consent? Seeing none. Any member of staff like to pull anything from consent?
no, Mayor.
And any member of the public wish to pull anything from consent? Great. Seeing none, Councilmember Henderson, can we get a motion on our consent calendar, please?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, consent carries. Appreciate that. And we're going to move right into our first discussion item for the evening, item 7.1, environmental justice assessment and update regarding inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility idea action plan. And we have Andrea for her first presentation to council. Welcome.
Thank you. And before Andrea jumps in, I'm very pleased that she will be presenting this evening as her first presentation to council. Just wanted to remind council and members of the community that Andrea is new to the town. She's been with us for about 6 weeks. So she has graciously stepped up to present this evening, but she actually was not here for much of the project that we'll be discussing. So I'm here as well for any background information. We're going to give her a little bit of grace if she doesn't know all the answers because she's just jumped right into this over the past 6 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Have you guys seen the video where there's a little girl that goes, "I'm just a baby"? That's kind of how I feel in the role, but I'll do my best. So this is the environmental justice analysis and an update on the IDEA action plan. So this is part of the community character element action item CC 6.G and the environmental justice program. So it was asked of the staff to conduct an analysis of Truckee's underserved communities that might not be identified as disadvantaged by California's EPA, following the California Office of Planning and Research guidance on using community-specific data to identify underserved communities, as identified, developed appropriate environmental justice programs and/or an environmental justice element per SB 1000. So first, what is environmental justice? Achieving environmental justice means ensuring that every individual enjoys equal protection from environmental hazards and has the same access to decision-making processes that affect their environment.
Our slides are not quite loading correctly.
Yes, the slides aren't loading, but I can describe it
This
to
is
you.
a test for Andrea to see how she acts under pressure. You're doing very well.
So this is, it was the logo for the town of Truckee and the logo for EQUI, the Equity and Wellness, the consultant that we use. And they did, I don't know what these aren't loading correctly. I'm going to.
Why don't we exit the presentation and try reloading it? We have some great graphics up there if you can imagine them.
Just 1 second. Well, the town collaborated with a consultant that was, like I said, the Equity and Wellness Institute. And they are the ones who... Should I close it? And sorry.
Give us just a couple minutes to get this figured out. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Gonna give them 20 seconds. You want us to take a break? We can. Oh, looks like we got you.
There.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So again, we collaborated with EQUI, and through internal documents like the general plan, the climate action plan, internal, external interviews, staff survey, and data mapping, they did some data collection and analysis. And some of the data mapping included population density, location of medical facilities, grocery stores, transit stops, trails, parks, open space, railroad and road noise extents, fire maps, fire hazard safety zones, flood zones, airport land use compatibility, and affordable housing with overlays of census data for Latina population and proximity to amenities and hazards. You can find all of these maps in the website. This is just an example of one of them. And let's move on to their findings. So the main one is that there were no significant environmental justice issues that were identified within Truckee. So great news. But the term environmental justice is generally either unknown or misunderstood by both town staff and the community. So that's one thing. And then town staff and the community don't have a full understanding of the climate action plan and or the emergency response system. So we're seeing a trend here, some like not understanding of what this means. And although we don't seem to be experiencing significant issues related to environmental justice, there are improvements that could be made to reduce physical and economic barriers for people who face inequities or belong to these disadvantaged communities. And now for the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Action Plan. This was part of the Community Character Element Action Item CC 6.A Public Outreach, which says to review the town's policies and programs related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and create policies for equitable public outreach, including targeted outreach to underrepresented community groups, ensuring the availability of bilingual materials and interpreters for all community meetings, and conducting meetings in accessible locations. And the Safety and Noise Element Policy SN 6.3, Inclusive Emergency Planning, that says to ensure emergency planning is representative of the diversity of Truckee and provides members of disadvantaged populations meaningful opportunities to engage in emergency planning efforts. These are some things that we've been doing. Like the first two pictures are from Dia del Niño, but I put them there to kind of illustrate what Jen was saying, the Dia de Muertos event that's coming up November 1st, 5:45. So it's going to be a very similar event with the library, with Sierra Community House, with the face painting too. We recently have a 6th grade class come and pretend to be council for a couple hours. Thank you, Major Polvy. That was really fun. They were really interested. We've also been working on the partnerships that were previously established by the former DEI program manager and building some other ones like more partnerships with TTUSD. I'm attending an ELAC meeting on the picture down there, which is the English Language Advisory Committee with the school, and we'll be going to DLAX in December. And we were also at Big Truck Day this past weekend where we gave some information and did some outreach on the IDEA program. And also we had job applications there, and we're trying to kind of diversify our hiring efforts. We work with the town of Truckee, obviously the staff steering committee, which was is still comprised of 9 members from diverse backgrounds, tenure in town, different departments, and with EQUI, the Equity and Wellness Institute. And there was some data collection and analysis, internal documents, data mapping, internal and external interviews, and staff surveys as well. And we are proposing shifting from the term DI to the term IDEA. And this is by placing inclusion at the forefront. IDEA emphasizes creating environments where everybody feels welcome and valued. We know that DI can be a politicized term, and we don't want that. It's not the intent of the town's program to do that. We are incorporating one more word into the acronym, which is accessibility. And we want to communicate that we want everyone to have access to our programs, our information, and our services. And the word is easier to pronounce and to remember, and it's also easier to use in logos and promotional materials. And last but not least, and one of my favorite ones, it translates seamlessly into Spanish. Idea means idea. Idea means idea. Is the same word in English and in Spanish. And every single word in the acronym works in both languages. So that's another reason why. And for next steps, we want to keep working with the steering committee and department heads to finalize themes and findings and develop and prioritize a suite of new actions, programs, and policies to recommend as tasks in the 2025-2027 Strategic Priorities Work Plan. We will also facilitate community engagement and input on these recommended initiatives through workshops and discussions with local community-based organizations, community leaders, and community members. These are some of the ones that we are already partnering with that we would request input from. And following the adoption of the 2025-2027 Strategic Priorities Work Plan, we would develop a public-facing action plan document detailing the IDEA program and highlighting its core objectives and planned actions. So what we are recommending is for the council to accept the Truckee Environmental Justice Analysis Report and receive an update regarding progress and next steps with the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Work Plan. And that is it for me.
Excellent job. Well done on your first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything to add, Hillary? Are you good?
I think that's it on our presentation. Of course,
Okay.
we're happy to answer any questions.
Great. Excellent. We'll start with council. Any questions? Councilmember Klostad?
Yeah, great job, Andrea, and thank you so much for this. And I understand that this is kind of a partial deliverable from what's the consultant's name? Wellness
Equity.
So what are we missing from this report that you're expecting to still receive in the future?
I can jump in on that. So we are wrapping up the contract with our consultant, Equi, that ends at the end of this month. Right now, what we have from them is a fairly robust draft document of themes, findings, and recommendations, but wanting to respect the process and wrap up getting feedback both from our internal steering committee and department heads, as well as from the external stakeholder group that Andrea identified. We're not quite there yet, ready to publicize those. We're still working through that process and making sure we have feedback and find the next steps that fit and are most meaningful for our Truckee community. So we'll be continuing to work at the staff level with the steering committee and with those stakeholders to refine the document that we have from Equi right now.
Okay, thank you. And I ask because I'm wondering if there's going to be specific markers that then, similar to a greenhouse gas emission inventory, that we could re-inventory or recheck on these and see if our if we've improved or not improved, or have some sort of ability to understand where our progress has best been made. There
will be. So there are a couple of things. We have two distinctly different but related documents that we're working towards. One is the environmental justice assessment that is essentially wrapped up. So that's what we're presenting with a recommendation to adopt. That's something that is not just a one and done. It's something to periodically go back and reassess how we're doing. So every few years. So that'll be one metric. And then in the action plan and work plan, there will be specific projects and tasks we're working on similar to ours, or town-wide strategic priorities work plan. And some of those will certainly have specific metrics or things like that, like number of community events,
measure ourselves against.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. I think that's so important, and something as hard to define as this is, to have some specific measurements that we can look back on and adjust from. And I had one more question. And when do you expect to come back with your recommendations of the task items that we would need to consider in our work plan?
We're thinking end of the year, to give us time to meet with the steering committee, do some exercises on like what themes, findings, recommendations they agree on, which ones we need to refine, which ones they're like, no, thank you. And then to have time to meet with community organizations, community members, community leaders, and get community input on all of those.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just adding on to that just a bit, we anticipate having them pretty much wrapped up by the end of the year, but staff's recommendation is to really incorporate this process into our work plan development for the next 2-year work plan. So that'll depend on sort of the exact schedule of that work plan development, which will be around end of the year, beginning of 2025.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember Roma.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that presentation. Great job. We did receive a public comment from Sophia from Mountain Area Preservation this afternoon, and I know they were very interested and supportive of us moving forward with this component during our general plan process. So I did just want to ask a few things related to some of their comments. They kind of asked about the amount of interviews conducted with community members, and was it enough? And I was just curious if staff has any reflection on that and understanding of what the consultant did with outside staff or non-staff.
Sure. I think one could assess any process and say we could always do more interviews. In this case, there were 9 external interviews conducted. Those weren't just randomly selected people off the street. They were very targeted to address specific organizations in our community that are sort of on the front line of serving our target communities within the action plan, such as the Sierra Community House, Sierra Senior Services, the Washoe Tribe of California, Nevada, groups like that, where the folks who were interviewed are the ones who are sort of the boots on the ground working directly and getting feedback from those communities. So that's how those interviewees were selected.
Great, that's super helpful.
Can I add something to that?
Go for it.
Quick? And some of the things that we will include in the work plan will obviously relate to this, and we're not done with that process. We will definitely get a lot more input from the community, sort of not as high level anymore, but with specific action, task, policies, programs that we want to include. So we will for sure have more community input.
Got it. Thank you. That's good to know too. This isn't a complete process yet. There was they asked a question regarding the mapping and if it had the necessary data, because it identified the location of Hispanic or Latino populations, but it didn't highlight seniors, indigenous folks that were highlighted as maybe some of the other groups. Do you think more data is going to be gathered for the maps, or these maps have enough information for our future needs?
Staff's recommendation is to adopt the environmental justice assessment, so not gather more data on this current assessment. Again, in future assessments, it'll periodically be reassessed and could certainly look at if this isn't sort of the broad scope that a council at that time would like. We could look at whether there's a need for adjustments. We relied on the expertise of our consultants. This is what they do, and This is our first assessment. We are certainly not the field experts in this. So these were the data points that they recommended tracking.
Great. Thank you very much.
Good questions. Thank you. Vice Mayor Zabriskie, any questions?
The answers to the written questions pretty much answered all the things that concerned me. I just have a little bit of follow-up on them, and then the map letter as well. I was looking for a unifying theme, and I think I got it or something specific about what we're trying to do, who we're trying to serve, and in what way. I think I got it out of the answer to number 7, and to paraphrase it as I understand it, is what we're doing is trying to establish greater engagement with disadvantaged members of our community on the topics that affect them that the town has some control over.
Exactly.
Is that a fair paraphrasing?
Yes, more engagement with them, and then for them to also inform us of what we need to do.
Okay. And then I was thinking, being a senior, I was thinking that how would I respond to being characterized as disadvantaged? And more broadly, how do other people respond? Will you be thinking of another, I don't know what the word would be, but another term that someone who sees that as a pejorative characterization can take it as a more neutral term?
I'll jump in on that because that's something that the steering committee actually spent a lot of time talking about.
Okay.
And the term that they settled on to use is communities of focus.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily disadvantaged. In some cases, a term sometimes used as underserved, but that was the term that they recommended as sort of a neutral, not pejorative term.
Okay. And then on the mountain area preservation letter, I was trying to look past the rhetoric and find something more specific because we are a small town, small population. I was hoping for a more specific identification of locations that might suffer from some kind of environmental impairment or disadvantage, which environmental justice is intended to address, or some identification of what the impact is that they think should be addressed. And the only reference was to noise pollution. I was trying to think of mobile home parks and the low-income apartment houses. Which one of those locations suffers more noise pollution than I do sitting out in front of the coffee bar?
Is that a question?
Yes.
I don't think we have that answer. There's no study. Right.
All right.
Well, I think partially the answer is that they really didn't find an extreme or noticeable level of environmental injustice in their research.
Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
And Vice Mayor, maybe just to add on, I think in terms of overarching themes, and it's a bit unfair because you haven't seen maybe the themes and the findings from the IDEA report, but in addition to what you were stating, I think that's the primary one. One of the big takeaways from my perspective is the amount of education needed around whether it's the terminology, whether it's around what environmental justice is, climate action plan, IDEA. There's just still a lot of uncertainty about what it is and not even what we're trying to accomplish, just what it is. And that's been a big takeaway for us.
Well, from the answers, it looks like you've gotten pretty close.
I think we have some work to do still.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. I just a couple of questions and then a lot of thoughts on deliberation once we get there. The consultant is not here to answer any questions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So amongst the communities identified, we had 9 different communities, right? Youth, non-English speaking, indigenous, senior citizens, etc. And we only had 9 community members interviewed. Was it one from one of each of those segments, if you will?
It was some of those members who were interviewed serve multiple communities. For example, Sierra Community House who has the Promotores program. They also have broader programs to serve low-income communities. So it wasn't strictly one interviewee per group.
Were each of the groups represented in the interviews?
I don't believe that a youth member was interviewed, but some of the interviewees serve youth.
Okay. So we have a staff survey that was conducted amongst staff at Town Hall. It sounds like a community survey or focus groups or any other community data collection was not conducted as part of this assessment. Is that right?
That's correct. There was no community-wide survey as from EQUI. They did review and spent a lot of time sort of digging into the outcomes on a survey we did last year, which was our community engagement survey, where we specifically asked a number of questions on demographics and on how you like to receive information, what information is most relevant to you, things like that, knowing that that would plug into this process.
And as part of you mentioned a broader, larger report that isn't quite ready to come to council, but when that comes, is that going to include more additional community data collection and information from stakeholders amongst the groups that have been identified?
Yes, so that is a significant piece of the process that will be playing out over the next couple of months, is refining the recommended actions coming into the action plan and on the work plan, and then going out to those community groups. And Andrea had a slide listing a number of groups to get feedback and make sure that the tasks that staff are recommending and that were informed by our consultant process and the outreach we've done are indeed the most meaningful tasks we could take on, and the things that resonate with them to get that level of feedback. The start of the plan is sort of very 30,000 feet, so we wanted to get down to more sort of concrete actions and steps we could take in order to get meaningful feedback on those types of actions.
And can you just maybe give a little bit more color or context of what is that community engagement going to look like? What is that data collection going to actually look like to make sure we're getting really meaningful input from the groups that we have identified here in this report?
We are thinking several different things. Workshops are one thing, surveys are another, and just attending meetings that are already established. For example, if we want youth, there are leadership classes in TTUSD. There are groups like La Fuerza Latina or La Raza Club, so we have like a bigger pool and not just the same kids over and over again. If we want seniors, we are partnering with Sierra Senior Services, and we will kind of tailor all of our engagement efforts on like what the groups need. Like another meeting that we could go to is the ELACs, like I mentioned, where we can go and have these activities where we maybe ask them to rank the tasks and ask them like, hey, do you think that this is relevant? And if not, why not? Or what are the ones that you think? Like, we're going to do it as a conversation, not just, hey, here's what we have and thank us for it, right? Like, we will talk to them, ask them questions, and that's also why it's a longer process, because we can't just finish it internally and then go and say, hey, this is what we're doing, okay, thank you, bye. We are like, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing, and we're doing it internally first, because I can't go out in the community and say, oh, we're thinking about giving everybody $500 a month, right? Like, we need to know first what is plausible and what things, because we also can't do everything in 2 years. So out of the million things that I want to do or that we want to do, what are the ones that are like actually possible? Which ones do we have funding for? For example, one of the things that we wanted to do is create more trust with seniors for Tart Connect, because some of them like either don't use the app or don't really trust it. But until we know if the service is going to continue or not, there's not really a lot of point. There's no point of me going and saying like, hey, use this, it's great, it's amazing, and doing like this whole campaign for it to end in the spring, right? So we are doing the process internally first, so then going out and saying, like again, through surveys, meetings with them, workshops, and just tailored engagement to each of these groups to get their feedback.
No, that's great. And so is this intended as sort of a very quick update or synopsis of a bigger assessment report that we're supposed to be getting?
The intent of this is to present the environmental justice assessment for adoption. That's our recommendation. And then while we were doing that, just wanted to provide a brief update on where we are in the full action plan, which we're not quite ready to present yet.
So this is the totality of the assessment. This
For the
I will say rather short report from the consultant.
This is the
entire
totality of the
assessment.
environmental justice assessment, not of the full action plan, which
Right.
Those assessments were connected. So this is a piece of the total assessment.
And the assessment is intended to inform the action plan going forward.
That's correct.
Okay. I think that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Great. No further questions from me. We'll open this item up for public comment. Any member of the public, come on up. We're hoping you would, Erica. Nice to see you.
Do I need to fill out a form?
Yeah,
All right.
good job.
First time. Hi, I'm Erica Mertens, a Truckee resident. Congratulations. I just wanted to say thanks to Andrea for that wonderful presentation. And thanks for the slowdown on the technical slide difficulty. Got me to overcome the toddler life at home to get here a little sooner. I just wanted to say that I just really encourage the town to be patient with the process of the public outreach. It sounds like you have outlined robust and meaningful engagement, but it's almost November, which is wild. There's some important things happening in November on a national scale and local scale. So just wanting to be mindful of that. It feels like trying to rush to a finish line with the holidays in December, having been through the planning efforts of community engagement processes. I would just encourage the town to be mindful of the season that's ahead, and in order to really allow the community to see all that the work and the findings that have been made so far for the most effective implementation of this moving forward in the future.
Thanks so much, Erica. Thanks for starting the process as well. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
If anybody else has public comment, be ready. We'll keep you moving.
Hi, my name is David Diamond. I love great ideas, and the idea to use IDEA as an acronym for DEI, I think is a fantastic idea on many levels. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment on this item? No?
Can I just thank Erica for starting this?
You can.
And just thank you so much, because without you, I don't know if this would have gone off the ground. So thank you so much. And thank you for letting me continue this. I feel so honored to follow in your footsteps. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment. And we'll bring it back to council for any deliberation. I think we started with Councilmember Klostad. Any comments? I think we've received the update, so we've done well there. We're probably going to accept the report. So any other comments to add?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate staff's more in-depth discussion and clarification, I think, for the community that, again, this is just one small piece and there's a bigger process coming forward, and really appreciate Erica's comments and her involvement. And so I would echo that and ensure we're giving this process enough time to have these conversations. It sounds great, all the ideas you have and so, I support, if this needs to take a little longer, and yes, we don't see it by the end of the year because you need more time, that totally makes sense.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, I have several. First of all, I'm happy to see that so relatively early in this process, we're moving away from environmental justice as the framework for approaching the issues we're trying to address. Those are federal and state statutory schemes that really don't apply to Truckee. The way I understand it and the way the staff report confirms, this is not a case of environmentally disadvantaged communities. It's more about being a more inclusive community and identifying the people who need to be included, learn how they can participate and be heard before the town so we can be working together as a community. So along those lines, I agree with the public comment about changing the name to IDEA instead of DEI. DEI is not merely a politically loaded name. It's also DEI programs are having problems throughout the United States, mostly institutional, internal, with employees or students. They're running into problems, particularly on the diversity and equity issues. That is another reason for us to have a distinct program. And I do subscribe to the notion that inclusion is what we're trying to address first. I appreciate that you have gone so far as having a much better sense of who our audience is and the ways in which we're going to help them. The identification of the topics we would cover with them includes climate action issues like weatherization for lower income people. Now that overlaps with environmental justice, but the way you're approaching it, it ties in with other topics that are of local concern. So it's addressing our issues, not the ones that involve brown fields and air pollution and being next to docks in the Port of LA. On the, you have thought it through much more thoroughly, I think, than we have. I just want to encourage you to keep going, stay at it. It looks really great so far. For other organizations that are concerned about environmental justice, I encourage groups that are really good at advocacy to get involved with the local mobile home parks and apartment houses, help form tenant associations that can allow them to advocate for things like cleaner facilities, better facilities, rent stabilization, whatever. That's where those tenants could use help from some of our nonprofits who are skilled in that kind of thing. And just the final thing, coming back for a minute to environmental justice, even though we're not going to try to put a round peg in a square hole and be boxed in by it, I was trying to think, what is the closest thing to environmental impact? And when you look at Donner Creek Mobile Home Park, you notice that it has a lot of cottonwood trees in there, and that tells you that used to be part of a floodplain. So if there is an environmental impact threatening any of these locations, it's the climate impact of more severe storms possibly affecting Donner Creek Mobile Home Park. No one's brought it up. Something to think about. I don't know if it's right for this group, but it's out there. So those are all my comments.
Yeah, well done. Thank you. Councilmember Henderson, go ahead.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Erica and Andrea for all of your work on this and starting to really lift this initiative at Town Hall. It's a new, relatively new council initiative that we started, not that long ago, a little over a year ago. And anything that is new it's hard, it's messy, it's complicated, it's all of those different things. That said, everyone who knows me knows I'm a really, really direct communicator. So I'm just going to be direct. I'm really disappointed with the quality of the work in the consultant report. I had and I still have very high hopes for this initiative. I'm actually the council member who advocated for resources for a DEI staff person in town hall during our budget process and ultimately getting support from my council members for that. But the consultant report itself it's a mere few pages. The entire first page is simply an overview of this initiative, and it really doesn't have the type of analysis or detail that I would have expected, given the taxpayer dollars that we're using on this initiative. And why I'm stating sort of the disappointment in that is that this assessment is really critical to developing the action plan, to developing our next steps, to developing all of the future programming and initiatives coming out of this assessment. MAP, in their public comment letter, pointed out that only 9 community members were interviewed. I understand that they're from organizations that represent, a broader array of constituents. But that to me is lacking in data collection and input from the community members we are genuinely seeking to serve. It's very possible that the findings contained in this report would be entirely different if we had more input from those stakeholders. I'd also say that, we had 12 interviews amongst staff at Town Hall. So the findings are biased toward a perspective coming out of Town Hall, not a perspective coming out of our community. That is wildly problematic when we're talking about these types of efforts. A few other comments that I have. I struggle with the acronym shift from DEI to IDEA. I know MAP talked about that as well in their comment. I understand, it's an easier acronym, absolutely. It's perhaps not as politically charged, but I think it's another example of Town Hall changing names and acronyms, and that introduces confusion to our community. And if you review the literature in this space, you'll see that the IDEA acronym, as opposed to, DEIB for belonging or DEI or others, it's really used by those in the space when there's an intentional focus on access, often from a disability perspective, thinking of things like healthcare access, built environment access. And I don't know if that's the intention here, but I'd really hesitate to adopt an acronym given that we have so many diverse, underserved and under-resourced communities and members in Truckee, including those who have disabilities. Finally, a few other comments I'm just going to say on language, because we've talked a little bit about language tonight. I know the state of California, the feds use the term disadvantaged to mean very specific criteria. The term is often viewed as very pejorative, so I'm really glad to see we're moving away from that term and that we're going to use communities of focus instead. I think that's much more appropriate. And that I'd note that similarly, the term low income is often used as derogatory as well and really forces a certain identity on an individual, and it may not be an identity that they themselves have. So I would caution us around low income language as well. So in short, I'm just going to say the report, there's not much to this assessment. If we're actually using an assessment to build the next part of this action plan, I don't think we have it. So I don't feel comfortable actually accepting this assessment.
Okay.
I told you I had only a few questions and a lot of thoughts for deliberation. Honestly, I warned you.
No, and I mean, I agree with you. I was pretty disappointed with it too. I also have concerns with shifting to IDEA versus DEI. I agree. There's definitely some confusion there when you're trying to launch a new program. Changing the name can be challenging. So I'm not in disagreement with you. I am willing to accept the report tonight. I think I heard consensus that we were all willing, or at least there's a consensus to accept the report. But I think your comments are well noted. I think it definitely strikes a chord. And I think I can find a lot to agree with you on with that. With that also said, I think we're making great progress. It might not be perfect progress, but we're moving forward. We have a position. We are in the budget, and next steps are going to be a work plan and a programmatic direction, which hopefully you can inform as much as council's opportunity to interact with that process will be, and really trying to move forward in a way that works for our community. I think some of the examples that Councilmember Zabriskie also brought up, really appropriate as well. So, I think there's a lot of comment on that. I think this is going to continue to just be a challenge in our community as we move through it. And, we've put you in that really wonderful position where you get to carry that forward. And we appreciate you for doing that and for really charting a course where there hasn't been one, where, we're still in the infancy of it. And I think that's also important to recognize, is that as we move this forward, we will have the ability to shape it, to direct it, and to put different types of resources to it as they come up and as they're needed. So I'll leave it at that. We just have some recommendations. We don't have any formal action that's needed. I think you've heard enough comments from us at this point. Is there any other direction you'd like? There is.
One point of clarification is
Please.
that I don't think we're quite clear on whether council would not like to accept the recommendation of changing the name to IDEA or stick with DEI. I heard a couple not in favor and one in favor.
I was assuming people who were in favor didn't say anything. That they were assuming favor. So I'm seeing yes nods over here. I'm seeing a yes nod over here. I would say I'm agnostic. I don't know how these things are going to land in the community. I know that DEI can be a charged issue or not, but at least it's widely understood. But at this point, I'm willing to go along with staff's recommendation. So I think you have direction there at this point, barring any other comments from council members not to speak.
Can I just say one more related
Please.
to the next report that we get?
On this topic?
On this topic.
Yeah,
of course. not
I didn't
the
know we were
next
talking about
agenda item.
7.2. Yeah, absolutely.
I would just say that I still remain very excited about the potential of this work. And I think this council has been really committed to data-driven decision-making. And so my hope is that the next report has much more data upon which we can actually make decisions. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think especially as resources are requested and directed during budget processes, that's always how we make a lot of our decisions. So
And I
for sure.
just want to make a quick clarification. There are two things that EQUI deliver. One is the environmental justice analysis, which is what you've seen, but there's a much more robust document that includes themes, findings, and recommendations with a lot more data, which is what is influencing the programs, policies, tasks that we will put in the work plan that we haven't presented. But this is not the only document that we are going off on. There's a completely separate one that's, again, much more robust, that has a lot more information, a lot more data that's just not finalized because we haven't had the chance to bring it to the steering committee and talk to them about it and see what changes need to be made. So please don't think that this is the only thing that we got from EQUI.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we look forward to all of that. Thank you. Great job, Andrea. We appreciate you very much. Thanks, Erica, for being here as well. Appreciate you. And we'll close out item 7.1 with that, right? We're good. Great. Moving on. Do you guys need a 5-minute break or you want to keep going? It's 6:40. Yeah, 5 minutes? Great. Okay. Well, yeah, that's fine. We'll take a 5-minute break. It's 6:38. Well, actually, we'll take a 7-minute break. We'll come back at 6:45. Thank you. Dan, we back on? Back there? Yep. I think I heard something. Cool. Reconvening. And we are on to item 7.2, quarterly fiscal year 23-24 through fiscal year 24-25 strategic work plan update. Jen, we just did this last meeting or 2 meetings ago,
Oh,
but
you
you're
stole my
back.
thunder. I was going to say deja vu. We're back at it again.
Here we are. All right.
Yes. This actually gets us back caught up into kind of our regular cycle. So thanks for indulging 2 meetings in a row, but or we had, I think, 1 meeting in between. This is the quarterly update through September 30th. And there's a few items that have been completed since then. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because you have a little bit of a discussion tonight about reprioritizing or giving some guidance to staff on reprioritizing a couple items. So for disaster preparedness and evacuation, we have completed the GIS mapping for the local hazard mitigation plan and supporting Truckee Fire Protection District in the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. You'll recall you received a pretty robust presentation with Truckee Fire here on that and their storyboard and approved that. In the housing world, new housing programs, long-term rental preservation program known as Rooted Renters. We took this as an opportunity to give you a few program stats on that since some exciting results. Received 65 applications in the first week, and then we actually ended up closing applications. So, potentially could have had more, but we knew we would be oversubscribed from a budget perspective. Of those 65 applications, 23 properties were accepted. And again, that's because that's when we became oversubscribed from a budget perspective. There's 16 new properties and 7 properties that were part of the Lease to Locals program. If you remember with adoption of this budget, you kind of created 2 different budgets, new properties and Lease to Locals, so wanted to give you that breakdown. In the 23 properties, there was 56 bedrooms, housing 55 people, 40 adults and 15 children, 35 qualified local employees, so members of our local workforce. The average incentive is about $3,300 per unit, $1,366 per bedroom, $2,261 per unit average rent, $929 per bedroom. And then interestingly, average AMI per adult resident, 86%. So we do have a lot of conversations about what space in the rainbow we want to be in the housing bridge. And you are meeting that far left-hand side of the bridge, and that's a place we strive to meet frequently. So wanted to give that information to you. You'll have a more robust review of the program. I think we said that after the first year, but as we go into the second cohort. Goal 4, building relationships and enhancing engagement in target populations under community cohesion. And we have established the partnership with Nevada County Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Program, another acronym. This one's the county's acronym, but we did support this and actually did this a while ago, but have been trying to figure out if the program was still ongoing. It's kind of converted to another program that we are supporting. So finally made that distinction. I went the wrong way. Let's see, those strategic focus areas and tasks that are in progress, building, I'm having an issue here. There we go, cybersecurity. This one I want to point out and talk about for a minute, and I'm not sure that I think Chris left. We had in October, so next time you see this, this will be complete. U.S. Army was here. They did an independent security risk assessment for us. We are one of 2 local governments to have this done. It's required for state agencies. We were proactive in wanting to do this and one of 2 local governments to go through this process. So they're generating the report. That's not something that will come back publicly for obvious reasons. It'll stay internal in terms of any risk that we may need to address. Overall, the feedback was pretty positive though, and it's just really amazing to see what our IT team has done in response to our cyber attack. It's not the crisis, right? It's how you weather the storm and how you respond afterwards. And they've really rebounded, and really proud of that team and the work we've been doing in this area. For our food waste reduction efforts, still working on the compliance with SB 1383. And then re-envisioning our town branding. We've been focused on recruitment efforts and updating the website with why we work for the town, focusing on our strengths culture and our new branding holistically. And then the public art master plan, that's about 75% complete right now. And for the highlight of the evening, and where I think we'll spend most of our conversation, the first item on here under environmental sustainability, Donner Lake Bank restoration, you effectively added that to the work plan with the budget, so we were just capturing that as a follow-up. And the new item is the rail yard master plan amendment. I do think it's important to point out there is an item in the work plan under infrastructure for the rail yard development agreement, specifically related to the theater. That's been on hold due to capacity issues. So this is separate in a different request for the master plan amendment. Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation would like to relocate into the space underneath the artist lofts. In the master plan, it's designated for retail space. And Truckee Community Foundation is not retail, so that would be office, perhaps event. I think we're still working out what the space would be. We would have to reprioritize staff time, so that's why we wanted to bring it forward to you for a discussion and make sure we were on the same page as to what reprioritization you would be supportive of. We have Danielle and Jenna here tonight, so they can certainly answer any questions on the process for that. But that's really what we're asking you to accept the quarterly update. We're back on track with timing, and then give us some direction on prioritization of the rail yard master plan amendment to accommodate relocation for the community foundation.
Thank you. I would just add some quick color commentary on that cybersecurity. It wasn't an incident. It was just an amazingly cool. The day I was here with the 6th graders, they were working in the back, and those were some serious military folks hacking into our systems. And like I said hi, and they like barely smiled, and I was scared. So if you defended our system from that crew, that was some really impressive and focused work they were doing back there. It was really impressive. I was just like, whoa. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. Whose turn? Anybody have any questions? Councilmember Romack, yeah, go for it, please.
Well, I know you mentioned on the rail yard master plan amendment and the interest from the community foundation for office space, potential event space. Do you have any more details? And I know we have people who will probably speak to this in public comment, but just kind of curious, maybe understanding how that space would be used. And if staff doesn't have any knowledge totally, then I could just ask in public comment. Maybe we can hear more on that.
We do have a description from them, but I think what we're looking at is how it varies from just a true pure office definition. And so we understand that that's how it's kind of operating right now also in their current space. But I think what we would need to do is look at how it fits within a definition in the master plan, or if not, what new definition could better accommodate all the different variety of things that they want to do or are doing with that space.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Klostad, any questions?
Yes, I have a couple.
Please.
So under infrastructure, task 3.12, the Jogger Drive Sports Park Trail Connection, didn't we receive a grant for this work, and is there a due date? I thought we got money for this connection.
We did apply for a grant. I'm having a brain cramp if we received it or not.
You could
Dan just
follow up with me
Dan just stepped out, so when he steps back in, we can follow up with him as well.
You can also email me in the future just for my own notification. 3.14 parking strategic plan. Looks like we're kind of wrapping up the meter part of it. Then there's supposed to also be, I thought as part of this parking strategic plan, a curbside management plan, but I didn't see that commented in the update. Is that separate, or is that supposed to be part of this strategic?
We've definitely been segregating out components of that, realizing it's a much bigger process. Yeah. So giving you the updates on what's been getting complete and determining next steps. And some of that might, parking, paid parking, parking management as a whole really might depend on some future actions of the council as well in terms of what you want to prioritize for demand parking downtown.
Okay. So I guess that's a placeholder for, we'll receive some sort of further input opportunity on that for parking management and curbside man.
I think we'll have a lot of discussion about that at your retreat as well in terms of priorities.
Okay. And then task 3.16, the downtown rail yard pedestrian crossing. So we now have a contract awarded for a consultant. What is a reasonable expectation of a deliverable from that?
I would say mid next calendar year as a rough estimate.
Communication section, task 2.1. So that's the town branding guidelines, 95% complete. What's left on that? I know we're working on our hiring information, but that seems separate. Is there, what else is left there?
There's a couple things. So we, outside of branding, we have been waiting for completion of some of the DEI or the IDEA action plan in order to inform some of the communication strategy. In addition, we've been working on if individual divisions would like some of their own icons and getting those developed, and that's still being fleshed out a little bit.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
No questions, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
On the rail yard project and TTCF, can you give me a better understanding of what the potential environmental impacts are that might trigger more environmental review, and specifically as it applies to TTCF? And then if we were to do, a categorical description that would allow for a broadening of uses, would it, in each case, would it simply be a question of traffic and parking, or?
So we just got their application in and we haven't done a comprehensive review of that. But typically when we have had a chance to go through everything, we also go back through the original environmental document that's applicable. So in this case, the EIR for the rail yard. So it's a lot of comparative between what their project description is for what their intended use is against what we assumed with the EIR. That typically does come down to relooking at the traffic to just make sure that there's not a substantial change from what we assumed. And then if there's any other sort of new factors to consider for that space specifically. So noise would be something, if they wanted to have outdoor use that we didn't assume before or something like that. We typically do that work once we've understood their project description more so and then gone back through what's in the existing EIR.
Okay, my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, that generally what we're looking at is to see if a proposed use or a change in use would exacerbate an adverse environmental impact, and if it were actually less of an impact than existing, we're in good shape for CEQA purposes.
Yeah, it's the use and then their operations both. So if the operations are less than we assumed, that would have been the equivalent with like a retail use or something else that we understood could have been located in that location. Yeah, we're looking to see if the impacts are more or less.
Okay, and I'm assuming that there remains an interest in having retail in there. And so would staff be looking at how to combine retail and office and put a limit on office, or am I getting too far ahead of what you're looking at?
Yeah, I think you're getting too far ahead because the question really is right now the restriction in the rail yard master plan, which has a 5-year limit for ground floor office, and that was sort of intended as an interim use while the rest of the master plan area was building out so that they could at least create some revenue generation. And that was actually requested by Rick Holliday when we were developing the master plan. But obviously in 5 years that nothing else has come to fruition. And so this is a question of, are we willing to relook at that 5-year restriction and change it? So retail was always an allowed use within the rail yard master plan, and there's some square footage limitations for all sorts of uses in there that's under the maximum allowed development area. So it's really not an issue of that. It's more just about this sort of limited term restriction about ground floor office.
See, and my final question is, are you willing or able to estimate how long it would take to complete work to amend the master plan if there were no environmental issues. You know, if a preliminary evaluation revealed no environmental issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is if we're not having to do substantial environmental review and our staff are pushing aside some other things and prioritizing this, that it could be 6 months-ish timeframe, assuming that we don't run into any sort of major concerns, issues that come up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my questions are going to be pretty much along those same lines. Just to give you a heads up, doesn't office have a lower traffic and parking requirement than retail or general commercial in our current zoning code?
Office and retail have the same parking generation rate, but I think what's different about what we're understanding about this space is that it may not just be pure office, that there are events and other things that the Community Foundation likes to do, which fall outside of the scope of a normal office use. And so that's what we want to look at and see, does it still fit within what we understand an office used to be, or are we creating a new use like an event space or something else which might have a different
Is that through a TI application? How are we going to identify that? Because isn't it just an open floor plan right now with no demising walls? And so I don't understand why we're splitting hairs on the type of use when it's just an open floor plan.
Well, it's the question of what's in the rear yard master plan right now, that the restriction is about ground floor office. So if we cannot classify them as office,
right,
then we have to figure out something else to classify them as. And there were no other land use definitions that are in our development code as the time that the rail yard was approved and adopted that fit anything besides office. And so I think these events that they're holding fall outside of that, which is why we said, well, this looks like you have to do a master plan amendment because, one, you wouldn't comply with the restriction for the 5-year time limit, and two, we're not totally understanding this to be office, so we think you have other uses that you are doing that.
Isn't there already an event space on the second floor though?
Of the artist lofts?
Yeah, like the whole like not expo.
It's a community space that's
whatever.
part of their project. So that's a different use definition.
And really?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a community space, right? So you just said it's a community space. So if the Community Foundation wants to propose a community space in that same location, aren't we there?
Community space for an apartment complex is part of their required amenities. So like they could do a tot lot or a community room or things like that all fall within something that's required as part of a residential use. And so, yes, it seems like splitting hairs, but that is sort of the nature of planning, that every little difference tends to trigger into a different use definition. So we have created something like an event space use in our newest version of the development code, but that's not in the version that
exists for the master plan.
Right, exists for the master plan. That's part of the development agreement. And so that's what we're saying. We might be able to take that definition in and just insert it, and that might make it work for this use. But we have to go through that effort of looking at all of that.
We'd love to hear during public comment if you plan on sharing some of the community event space that's existing, or maybe what your vision is for whatever improved space when you guys all have your opportunity. Back to some other quick questions. So why aren't we treating this like a regular entitlement process through the regular entitlement project with an application and a pre-application and just having a master plan amendment being attached to that entitlement process? Why is this elevating itself to the level of work plan at this point versus just letting it run its course?
I'll take that one.
Thank you.
Part of what I've understood is there's a little bit of a clock running for the Community Foundation. So our normal process would they would put them in the back of the line and they would be processed in the order that the application came in and with staff capacity, and that probably doesn't meet their timeline for their needs. And maybe they can speak to that a little bit more in their public comment, but I think there's some funding concerns and some other constraints they have. And so for us to prioritize this ahead of time, we wanted to make sure council was on board with deprioritizing other task items in order to move this forward.
I guess I'm misunderstanding how this wouldn't be considered a core service. If it's part of the entitlement process, it's a core service and would run its course through our normal course of business rather than, and it's just like any other project going through the process. And so all of our core services take priorities over town density bonus and other policy-driven things that, as you all remind us of, that's 10% of your workload and 90% is core service. So
we don't
help us.
typically take an application though and put it to the top of the line because
I'm not saying put it
being
to the top of the line.
But that's essentially what we're asking you if you want us to do.
And it's not just your standard land use application because it is a legislative act. So this is changing the master plan. It's not the same as if we have a use permit application, because we have to go through and have a planning commission recommendation that then goes to council, and then we have to come back to council again and do the second reading for it. So the time that's involved in that is longer because of just those process steps that we have. And so like we may miss this 1 year time frame if we process it as our standard legislative project that we're processing, versus if we put aside working on the density bonus program and slow down our work on development code amendments, then we can move this up and get it done in a 6-month-ish time frame versus a 1 year time frame.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but we've been talking about prioritizing a housing project, just as an example, a million times. I don't even know how many times. Hey, can't we prioritize X, Y, or Z? Right? This is satisfying community goals. And the answer has always been no. We can't. We can't prioritize that other than what's contained under state law. So is this the first time an actual entitlement project would be entered into the work plan and taking this sort of extraordinary step that we have never really executed on before?
I'll lean into that again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your point is valid. It might not belong, it might be in the other significant categories section of your work plan. It might not be under key support connectivity through infrastructure development that promotes alternative transportation, which is where the current rail yard development agreement discussion is. Maybe that's not even the right spot for that one. But when we received this request and we were talking about it as staff, it's what we think we were hearing, or at least what I felt like I was hearing from some of the council in terms of wanting to activate the space down in the artist lofts and that shared vision. So when I've heard that from you, we didn't have this request before us. Now it's come before us. Normally we would not take it to the top of the list and say, we're going to do this because we've heard from a couple of council members that there might be interest. We think the 5 of you need to give us that direction because it is outside of the normal course of process. You're not going to get individual housing projects coming forward with, let's move this one to the top because it meets this need. I think that's a whole different level. This is a community serving organization going into space that we've heard wanting to be activated.
Right. And I hear you 100% loud and clear. I guess I'm just concerned that this just opens up a precedent of how we're going to start to prioritize projects. I mean, what happens when the next rail yard project comes and we say the exact same thing and we have a rail yard project in process and application and we're saying, yep, sorry, you're just going to go back. And that's potentially a hugely changed project. And, you know, I'm just trying to understand in my own brain, when we've identified all of these other goals, you know, how this piece sort of fits into it.
I would go back to this as a nonprofit community serving organization versus a private entity developing a revenue generating business.
And also, again, because we're talking about changing code, which is a council decision, not a planning commission level review project, right? So that's somewhat of a distinction too, that if we have an application for the rail yard, that's going to the planning commission most of the time. Someone's asking to change the wording in the master plan, that's coming to council as a final decision. So that's the distinction too.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'll hold some of my rest of my comments and for after public comment and we hear what the rest of us have to say. Any other questions from council? Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. Sorry. And Vice Mayor Zabriskie talking about environmental studies, because I know we're talking about a, potential specific use. When you look at environmental impacts, specifically I'm thinking VMTs on a project, is there any understanding of what their current impacts are to understand of like, well, we know they're generating X amount of VMTs already in our town and we're just moving them over here. There's none of that in.
So what I will say is we haven't done that level of work, but because the master plan was a program EIR, we did assume that we were going to have a variety of uses kind of within that. And so even though we have trip generations for all sorts of things and VMT and all that stuff that we looked at, when we have changes, we go back and compare it to those. So we have baseline data to use. So even when we said, oh, we're going to have a 750 seat movie theater, and we said, oh, no, we're not. We're going to go down to having 250 seat theater. Okay, what capacity did that free up? Like, that's the type of analysis we will do to look at it. So it's likely that we will have no new impacts. It'll be less, but we just haven't done that level of work yet.
And then just if we're opening it up for one use, and maybe you touched on this a little bit in the staff report, are there other ideas that we should be looking at and thinking about while we're amending the rail yard master plan to help us try to get other types of businesses or organizations in there? Or no, if we want this done in 6 months, it would have to be solely focused on this piece?
What I'm hearing from staff is if you want this done to meet a timeline that we think meets the community foundation's needs, it's just this one piece. I also think that we have to be careful to distinguish between the master plan and the development agreement. Some of the other items like the theater or the development agreement, opening that up.
And this is a policy question. Do you want to eliminate that restriction on ground floor office in the master plan? So that was an extension of prohibitions that we have on Commercial Row and elsewhere, right? So we haven't had that discussion in front of council yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this end? No? Okay. Let's open it up for public comment. Come on up, podium, state your name, green microphone. Make sure it's on. Coordinate yourselves.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, council members and staff. My name is Christina Kind, and I'm here representing the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. We are requesting prioritization of our application for a master plan amendment to use the ground floor space at the Truckee Artist Lofts. This is an opportunity to revitalize an underutilized area and advance the original vision for the space as part of the broader railroad project. We are requesting more than to relocate our office. We are proposing a community space to bring together our community-based organizations and community for belonging and connection. We're talking about even youth spaces that can be third spaces for youth to come, be around friends that are free. As facilitators of the Mountain Housing Council for 6 years, we recognize the critical need for affordable housing at all income levels, and we're deeply committed to ensuring that the Truckee Artist Lofts not only succeeds, but also serves as a model for future developments. The Community Foundation has been involved from the start, working to secure funding and making our own investment in the project's success. When challenges emerged with newly located tenants, the Community Collaborative of Tahoe Truckee, a program of the Community Foundation, collaborated with other partners to tackle the stigma surrounding Truckee's affordable housing and this building in particular. We helped to connect tenants to essential services and to align stakeholders around a shared vision. While much progress has been made, the stigma still lingers with the ground floor space remaining incomplete and vacant. Filling this space is essential for reversing that perception, ensuring the building reaches its full potential, and that future housing projects in the region are not delayed by poor community perceptions. The urgency to prioritize this amendment over other council projects stems from the critical need for connection and belonging in the community. By finishing this project, we will not only meet an immediate community need for inclusive gathering spaces, but also activate investment in the remaining railroad project, which is currently listed for sale. Our commitment reflects a broader mission to create sustainable, thriving communities. Prioritizing this amendment will allow the Truckee Artist Lofts to not only serve as an affordable housing development, but also become a vibrant hub of activity that brings people together. It directly aligns with the Council's goals to build relationships and enhance engagement with target populations, as well as increase the production and preservation of housing for our local workforce. We appreciate your consideration of our request and applaud the progress you've made on your work plan. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Christina.
Good evening, Council. I'm Kelly Carroll and staff. Thank you for your support. I am the board chair of TTCF, and because Christina and I didn't compare notes, I'm probably going to be a bit duplicative, so excuse me for carrying on. As most of you know, TTCF has been around for more than 25 years. I can happily say I had a hand in its formation way back when. I still had no hair back then, but I was part of it. We have obviously a mission that encompasses a lot of different things. One of the things, of course, has been achievable housing. We are, in fact, an investor in the Truckee Artist Loft. We've put more than $2 million into it through our very first significant impact investment to help the project qualify for the subsidies to make the thing build. Without us, as we like to say, the project would not have penciled at all. So we obviously want to see the Truckee Artist Loft succeed, and we think with the ground floor being as it is, that is unfinished business. We want to make sure that the project succeeds, and with the traditional affordable housing pro formas, the mixed-use development piece of that is not part of the subsidy process. So the build-out is up to a commercial tenant with an estimated $500,000 for the build-out, which is what we're looking at. The developers have had, obviously, as history has shown, an impossible time getting anybody into the space. We have now raised the funds to build it out and believe that by being there and being part of the downtown community, both as an office and as Stacy will elaborate on, a bigger, broader space. The rail yard project and the Truckee Artist Lofts in particular will come to be what we all hoped it would be when it was first dreamed up and brought forward. The current problem, as staff has mentioned, is that we have this 5-year restriction, of which most of the 5 years is already run. There's no way, obviously, that we could afford to do the build out and have to move again in 2 years. That's just not going to work. We have the money from many private donors, but it will take a long-term investment for us to make our investment pencil. And so that's why we're hoping to be there or be the tenant at least for 15 years or more. So that's what, in more specific terms, the hope is that the change in the master plan will maybe slide a 1 in front of the 5 and reset the clock.
10 seconds left.
Okay. So anyway, I want to thank you very much for considering this and appreciate everything that you all think of and any other questions we can answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. I failed to mention for all you public commenters that our clock is broken and our timer is broken. So I am your artificial clock with help from some of our staff, but I'll give you a heads up. Like I just did, I'll give you a 10, 15 second countdown if you need it.
Sounds great. Thank you. I'm Stacy Caldwell. I'm the CEO of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. Good evening, council and staff. It's good to see so many familiar faces. And you've heard a little bit about our concerns on community perspective related to affordable housing when that space continues to be vacant. We were investors along with Martis Fund, Sierra Business Council, Town of Truckee. You guys, we've all been working on the master plan for the rail yard as well as the Truckee Artist Lofts for many years. And so perspective, you've also heard us take a successful attempt of raising some money. We really hoped that retail would go into that space. We really hoped to see it activated an extension of the downtown core to be able to realize this dream of a cross sector of our community utilizing that space beyond just housing, but to be the center of arts and culture and conversations and dialogues. And so that is really a little bit of the beginning of the space vision for us as well. And so I'm going to read so I can stay on time. While you might want to classify what we need as office space, you know our mission and our team is so much more. Currently, we convene, participate, and fund more than 20 collaborative working groups and task forces on a monthly basis, including Community Collaborative, Housing Funders Network, Forest Future Salons, First Five Working Group, Suicide Prevention Task Force, COAD when we have the opportunity, and a lot of others. And so, you know, the community members involved in these groups are key players in our region and deserve an inspiring location to collaborate and ideate on the solutions to our most pressing challenges as a community. Additionally, we see a gathering space to generate opportunities for creative conversations and activate arts and culture activities. There's an opportunity to create an inclusive and creative meeting space to gather, something that doesn't feel like a conference room, but instead inspires creative thinking and social engagement. Imagination and creativity are at the heart of what we do, at the heart of innovation and community solutions. We intend to explore different opportunities to bring people together and to build networks of trusted partners and expand our reach and impact. We believe that the Truckee Artist Lofts in downtown Truckee is a place for TTCF's mission to flourish and for us to be a part of activating something special and powerful for our community. We're ready to go. We have vision, funding, plans, and are asking you to prioritize this unfulfilled promise to our community. It's interesting hearing the conversation, especially with staff and our mayor, and you know, it's always more complicated than the visions are really complicated, and I really respect that. And I also don't think that we get to be at the front of the line just because we are who we are. I don't want to take advantage of that privilege ever. But I do see the partnerships that we have all created over decades now, and we're really trying to come to the table to solve the problem around housing perceptions and activating the rail yard project. So thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.
And I will stay close in case you have questions.
Yes, please do. I think we do. At least I do.
Good evening. My name's Alex Morolatos. I'm a board member of the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation. I'm from Tahoe Vista Kings Beach, and I first want to acknowledge that this board has a significant amount of input from so many organizations around you, so many nonprofits. So I'm here really just to give you a little bit of color, 2 context points. We are an organization that represents North Lake Tahoe. As I just stated, I'm from the shoreline. But if you go onto the website, I just ask you to contemplate potentially why, when you have a planning discussion with your planning organization, an organization like the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation doesn't necessarily fit into a model. But the core offerings of grant making, scholarships, nonprofit training, and philanthropic education is what we stand for. And we're a growing, thriving organization that's North Tahoe based that would be in this physical location for multiple years, bringing in constituents to the rail yard that had never even contemplated being there. Just imagine what this organization could do for the town of Truckee if we fulfill our mission and team with you in making this happen. So I think strong contemplation of this is definitely considered, and we respect your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Anybody else? Public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back for any additional questions. I have a few, but I'll let anybody on this side go first. No? Yeah?
No, I don't have additional.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions from you guys?
Remind me what this what this amendment is competing with in terms of priorities?
So it would be more development code amendments that we've been working on and the density bonus program, because in part, those are both UMI's projects and this would be UMI's project.
While you think of more, I'm going to ask Stacy a couple questions. How much square footage are you guys looking at down there? And are you going to take that whole first floor or just partial? Microphone. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Originally, there was a wine shop that was intended to go into the corner, and they ended up not going in. So that really made it possible for us to relocate our entire mission. Originally, we were thinking we would be bifurcated and just take over the two, but my board wasn't supportive of having two different spaces. And so when the third space opened up, that really made it a reality.
And how much square footage is that?
3,100 about.
3,100. And is your lease up? What is this
Thank you
timing
for asking
restriction?
that. There's like a few
None of you have
details.
talked about any
Yeah.
of those issues
Yeah.
and why we have
Thank
to
you.
fast forward
Yeah.
this.
So our lease is up in October of next year, so we're a year out. We took about a year to raise the funds. It's a little over $500,000, and it just took some time because we were also raising money for the forest and housing and scholarships and everything else. But and so October is when the lease is up. We cohabitate, we co-work with Excellence in Education, and so they're aware of this application and would also be co-located with us. We've provided site plans that are kind of rough, and it's about 60% meeting space, about 20% kind of what we're calling a facilitator's bullpen, so that the organizers of these different collaboratives can kind of programmatically organize. About 20% of it is actual just meat and potato offices. So we're really trying to not have cubicle land, and we want it to be a space where our partners, our nonprofits, our public agencies can come in and work, and our team can do the same thing.
And I assume you've spoken with the folks developing the library and their space isn't conducive or not. There's no square footage available, and it's also not a reality at this point. But, I think when you're articulating the community space, that's kind of the same pitch we keep hearing from the library a little bit. So I'm just wondering if we're duplicating or creating your own space for your own, all of the great programs you guys do.
I mean, first of all, we're 100% supportive of the library, obviously, and we have a lot of our staff, our board has advisors on that, on the library. This is a little more curated. It's not just an open space for any community member to walk into and use. It would really be dedicated to our organizing groups by day, and then in the evening we would like to test out some community type activities that fit within the vision of the space. And so kind of third spaces for youth, like pop-up game night, arts and letters type activities where we maybe have an author come and talk. We're really trying to think about, and we haven't really allowed ourselves to kind of go down that whole creative space, but I do think it's slightly different, a little more curated than the library.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one more question for staff. With a master plan amendment, are we amending, can we slice and dice the master plan by parcel, or are we, by potentially doing whatever action it is we're going to take, are we saying, okay, all master planning area, and it's a blanket openness to whatever we deem this use is on the first floor, or is it restrictive to a certain parcel?
Well, we will look at all of those options. We just haven't done that yet. So we'll present some different options for council to consider also. So it could be something as specific as only on this one parcel, or it could be for the whole master plan. We'll look at that.
And do we need, so master plan, because it's not the development agreement, so master plan does not need property owner or develop, like, what about the other parties that they're only privy to the development agreement? Sorry, help me work through that.
Yeah, I mean, there's the only nuance is that the development agreement has the rear yard master plan as an exhibit.
Right.
And so if we amend it, we don't know yet if we will also need to amend the exhibit of the development agreement, but that's a maybe at this point until we've had the time to look at what extent we're talking about. I mean, if it's only focused on one property, maybe the answer is no. But if it's for the entire master plan, maybe the answer is yes. So that's work that we would need to do.
So we're not sure if
We're not
anybody else
sure.
needs to sign off on this.
We're not sure because we don't know
whatever
what
we
we've
decide
settled on for a recommendation.
might get vetoed by a private property owner next door or something potentially.
Or our recommendation is to limit it to the one property. We just haven't gotten into that yet.
Okay.
Can I just make the point that I think you're demonstrating why it could take 6 months? These are all the details that we have to work through and what staff's time would be spent on.
Yeah, and I want to be really clear. I mean, I don't think any of us are in any doubt of what the Community Foundation does for our community, the leveraging, the convening. I mean, you're an amazing organization and we love you and we love everything you do. This has nothing to do with your mission and your values and your vision and your execution. This is simply like, how do we manage our policies and our planning process so that it's reasonable, right? And we're accomplishing all of the goals that we set out to accomplish. So I just want to be really clear. I don't think you took it that way, but good to vocalize that. Any other questions from council members? Did you guys hear whatever you needed to hear? Vice Mayor?
I think so. You said Yumi is working on both the housing density program, town's housing density program, and development code amendments. Are the development code amendments under any state deadlines?
Some yes, some no. So she's working on the ones as well as Jenna and I are also working on them for the new state housing laws. So some of them will go into effect before we can actually change the code, which creates some awkwardness, but those are real deadlines, and we probably won't meet some of them, and some of them we're really going to try to meet, but we've been handed 40 new laws that we've got to grapple with.
Okay, so as between density bonus and development code amendments, which gets a priority?
Development code amendments.
Thank you.
Okay, we've exhausted our questioning. We appreciate all of your patience. Who did we start with? Romack? Councilmember Romack?
I think so.
All right, take it away.
I'm happy to jump in. Appreciate everybody with the Community Foundation for participating this evening. And I think, Mayor, what you said is very appropriate. You guys do incredible work. I've attended your nonprofit workshop. I've went to events at your old space by Xander's. That's no longer there either. So I understand the great work you do and the great things you provide for our community. So I appreciate, Mayor, again, you saying that I think we all support the mission and that it's kind of, what makes sense from planning execution standpoint. This one's tricky. I think, in people I talk to, we want to see this area activated. Everybody talks about what's happening over there in the rail yard. And so I do see this as a good opportunity. Excited to hear it's more than office space. Danielle, I heard you say, are we even interested? I don't think I would be interested in a fully office space project that doesn't activate things. That's why our downtown is so vibrant, because we have first floor commercial. So I see opportunities for this project activating that space and supporting residents who live there. But yeah, it's tricky. I will also just say I am excited to hear more outcomes from our operational assessment, because Danielle, I know your staff works incredibly hard and you guys do so much. And yet I also hear it sounds like we need more people to help out on some of our priorities and being able to move things quicker. So I know that's a whole separate conversation, but do want to highlight that because, again, we ask a lot of you and your team, so we appreciate it. And it would be great if we could do more and move things a little quicker. I'm interested in potentially moving this up and having staff work on it, but also would love to hear from my fellow council members as well.
You're not allowed to punt.
Punting.
Go ahead, Councilmember Klostad.
Well, before I jump into TTCF, I do want to just reiterate what I said the last time we looked at our priorities, and that I would like to see if there's ways to advance the schedule of the active transportation plan. So I don't want to lose sight of that. Luckily, that's a different work group. I'm going to jump in. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said about all the value that TTCF brings to our community and the constraints about what we're contemplating here. I am going to look to staff to help us carve out a way to find a path forward to facilitate this advancement, because I think it satisfies multiple goals that the council has and the community has, not just to activate this space, but as TTCF and their board so accurately demonstrated that, you know, this really does fulfill a commitment to the workforce housing and specifically to the artist lofts and that community. So I would look to staff to find a way to help us carve out a very specific, narrow path that allows us to do this without opening up the risk of having this be something that then we get inundated with future requests for. So given those parameters, good luck, staff. That's where I stand with it. And I'm fully supportive of the reprioritization that's necessary in order to accomplish that.
Thanks. Councilmember Henderson, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I think you've heard it. This is a tricky one, right? Yes, I mean, everything that's been said, you guys, you do so much work for our community, provide so much benefit in our community, services, support, all of the partnership development and building that you've done. I'd also say that your work does align really well with one of our council goals that's right up there around community connection and supporting inclusivity in our community. You mentioned youth spaces. We need more of those. That's something that I hear consistently in conversations with folks. I think that the comments that Mayor Pallavi first mentioned are also right? Is there a different way to do this? We've never prioritized certain applications, as you've heard, and I'm very cognizant of the type of precedent that sets. I realize that, it is a nonprofit, you provide tremendous community benefit, but will the community see that, or will they see that we were unfair or perhaps even inequitable in how we prioritize applications? That's a potential risk, right? So I just want to be really direct about that. And then what happens if we have another nonprofit come forward in the future with a similar request and for some reason we don't move it forward? That puts this council in a very precarious position, I would say. I'll sort of end with, there are a lot of, I think, tremendous benefits. You all articulated them during public comment. There are some potential risks that we're talking about in terms of precedent setting. I want to see the space activated. I want to support our council goals of community connection and cohesion. I want to inspire more inclusivity and belonging in our community. I want a space that serves our community. I don't want an empty space at the end of the day. So I am in agreement with Councilmember Klostad that I do agree with bringing this up because I think the potential benefits do outweigh the potential risks here. And I really will also look to staff. That path has to be pretty narrow. It has to be concise. It has to be expedient. It has to be all of those things for this to be a win for all of us.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yeah. So staff's requesting direction from us about adding the request, the TTCF request to the work plan, understanding delays with other outstanding items, and we identified the other two items. And based on the questions and answers and the public comments that we heard tonight, as well as my experience in the community over the last 5 years, I think on balance, moving ahead with TTCF is in the greater community interest. And so I support directing staff to move forward with TTCF. I think that aligns with what council members Klostad and Henderson said. I think staff's recommendation is a very narrow one, as the question is the priority. And so I agree with staff and my council members.
Yeah, well said. I'd just like to point out a couple of things. I believe I'm in agreement. I definitely echo everything that you guys have all brought to the table. I think we've all sat up here now and thank you to the Community Foundation, but we also need more resources in case that hasn't quite come across. And this is not the first time we're sort of being asked to continually realign our in-house resources and have been hampered both through budget and other organizational challenges that we've asked to sort of move forward. So, I'm going to take this time yet again, and I think this is unfortunately my third time saying we need to move past this point of where we are. And I know we're waiting on this organizational report, and I know we're waiting on all sorts of things to happen and ballot measures and other things. But, it feels like we keep hitting these capacity constraints when the solution is in front of us and we have the budget ability and we have opportunities to make changes in some key areas. And I'm sort of getting to the point of frustration a little bit, as you can probably hear in my voice, of how we're going to move this forward and how we're going to move it forward and not wait another 8 months. Okay, until we adopt another budget and have another work plan and have another private session. We're continually doing this. So I'm going to say it again for the record that I think we need to be moving some of this more quickly and moving it forward more effectively. And, I will continue to patiently wait for that, but I'm going to keep saying this from the dais until we get it. Because this is the little bit of deference that we do have up here. To Councilmember Henderson's comments, I agree with you 100%. The precedent is a bit unnerving. I think we all know that there are a lot of public connectivity and key infrastructure projects in our work plan that have their own set of issues. That's not a denial of that. And, again, within our purview is to prioritize those and make decisions about what's best for the community. I also, in one of my frustrated points, am slightly disappointed that this is going to be so narrow. We have talked about the theater and the other issues with the rail yard for 5 years. Okay, so there are compounding issues for me that I'm frustrated about, that now we're carving out this little tiny thing to work on for 6 months, and we're going to have to go work on it again as soon as we're done with this. Are we all clear about that? That's frustrating. That's going to take more resources, and we're not really moving in that direction of using the places that have been pinned for development, like the rail yard, and making it easier. And whoever asked those questions in their council question and answers, I mean, you hit the nail on the head for me. Like, why aren't we doing this all at once? Why aren't we achieving an economy of scale? Why aren't we having those conversations? Now, I will take a step back from all of that. I apologize for my frustrations straight up, and I hope that we can get to a nice work plan and budgetary position where we can move some of this forward in a more economical and efficient manner. Because to me, this seems really inefficient as to how we're going to go about this. We're literally taking a staff member and saying for 6 months, that's not the only thing she's going to be working on, but we're taking her off something else for 6 months to literally 3-sentence redline a use agreement in a master plan. It just doesn't sit right with me. With that said, I think the Community Foundation, you have 3 votes of support. I also want to support this. I want to see this space filled. I want to see activation in the rail yard, and I want to see an economy of scale that starts to attract other interests in putting this forward. So I'm in agreement. I support it. I will support the work plan as it's been presented to us and all of the other things in the bike rack that we're just going to keep waiting on for who knows how many years until we figure out what we're going to do with all of that. But I want to be really clear that it's when the theater comes back, when these other issues come back, I want us all to remember that we are carving out 6 months of a planner, so a quarter time of a planner for 6 months for one use. And the reason why I support this is because the leverage that this particular use brings to the table, in my opinion, far outweighs, so much of what any individual project can do. And that's why I support it. And that will be the lens if we do have to have conversations like this again, that I use when I'm trying to make a decision like that. So I apologize for my soapbox. That's sort of what we're up here for. So I just wanted to get it off my chest. I think we have consensus. Councilmember Romack, did you want to chime in? You're good. Anybody else want to say anything? Staff, you have your direction. Community Foundation, get your paperwork into the planning staff as soon as you can so we can move this forward and get it off our plate as soon as we can and move on to some of the other work that we're also trying to get done. So everybody good on 7.2? Do you need any other direction? Active transportation plans coming back in the next 6 months, as is all the other CIP projects. And we can't wait to see those all accelerated as well with the same staff that we have.
And the Baker Tilly
And the Baker Tilly report, all of it. We're ready.
Let me make a comment, though, because I think this is important we could have spent some time on this, but knew you were going to have some discussion on this item. When you look at particularly the infrastructure strategic priority area, there's a number of capital projects that you'll see are completed from design and construction, and then there's 3 years of monitoring that we're spending for grant funding or environmental. The work plan has worked in several ways, but there's ways that we're not really capturing that ongoing work that's consuming that time. And the amount of effort in this 10% of what staff is doing and the rest of the core services, we can hire more staff and you're going to fill that up in a day. So at some point, there is going to be very difficult conversations about workload, whether it's core services or strategic focus areas, and what we realistically can accomplish with whatever number of staff we have. That's just kind of the nature of, we always fill the capacity we have, right? We do that in every area.
We're
right.
on board. We're
But
ready to fill that capacity. Bring that capacity on is what we're saying. So we hear you.
Yeah, we'll have lots of conversations about that. But I do think we need to recognize the ongoing amount of work that some of these take. So it's not just another capital project. It's now 3 years of monitoring that project and following up on funding. That's a pretty significant lift, as well as 40 new state housing laws that we wouldn't have anticipated in keeping up on that. So there are a number of things that keep coming our way, which is why we say this is a living, evolving document.
And we very much appreciate all of the work that staff does. We appreciate the organization. We appreciate the prioritization. It helps all of us be on the same page. And it's something we will always point to, and all of us do in all of our conversations when it comes to what's the town working on, because we all get those questions all the time. So no, we appreciate that. And I think we hear you loud and clear. And we will move on to council member reports. Are we good? Yeah. Okay. Council member reports. Wrapping it up. Is anybody ready to go first? Go ahead, Council member Henderson.
I don't have any reports, but they'll pick up once I'm off crutches.
No problem.
So
We
I'll
want
go
you
first.
to
Mine's fast.
heal up quickly. Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
I attended the Good Morning Truckee a little over a week ago, and the theme was Truckee's business landscape. Jessica Penman spoke for the chamber and said the chamber's already defined 12 business neighborhoods. They're on a business listening tour where they've touched 40 businesses. They're matching jobs with people seeking work. They talked about tech teens, and there was Councilmember Henderson hanging out with the tech teenagers, which was kind of fun to see. I guess this is before crutches, yeah. And then Carissa Bankley spoke for the town on our efforts to diversify and strengthen our local economy. And she covered innumerable topics that most of us are already familiar with being here on the council. Jan Holland talked about his business program at Lyft, and was interesting to hear. I think he said there's about 40 businesses who use that office space. And a unique feature about their operation is matching wellness with the work environment. So he's really trying to provide a holistic environment for the people who work there, and it's really interesting to see how much that has succeeded. He said essentially it's both entrepreneurial people and then remote workers. So it's a bit of an incubator for new businesses. I think what's common to all of them is they're working digitally. That seems to be the common nature of their operation. We had our final meeting for the year with the Homeless Advisory Committee, laid out a draft action plan that includes crisis stabilization, stable housing in the form of permanent supportive housing, partnerships and collaboration, then funding as the 4 goals. Right now, it's estimated we need about 22 beds for crisis stabilization between North Tahoe and Truckee, and then about 40 units for stable housing, for long-term permanent supportive housing for our region. And then finally, I got to watch Dan Wilkins make a 3-minute presentation at Rotary on the Legacy Trail. And I think if I have it correct, the town is, the Legacy Trail has incurred $40 million. It's taken $40 million to build this part of the Legacy Trail. Only 25% of that came out of the town's coffers, if I understand correctly. So that our town staff was able to leverage at a 3-to-1 ratio, spending only a quarter of our own money to get $40 million, which is a nice accomplishment. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Klifstad.
Okay. Civic Well Board meeting, and Vice Mayor Zabriskie, we met with staff about the Southwest Gas franchise agreement. Yes, it was, I can tell it was very memorable for you. Then my big report is from the Climate Transformation Alliance quarterly meeting. So at this meeting, the community dashboard was presented in draft form, and this is intended to capture projects that our members have done and approximate their greenhouse gas reduction or impact. So the dashboard will be available to all the public and all the member agencies, with the hope of sharing project ideas and impacts that could possibly be replicated. SBC also presented on the CTA website to host kind of a clearinghouse of policy documents and programs that members can have, or that members have implemented, and again can share the information and hopefully be replicated to benefit our community. A great example of something that we're kind of trying to model this after is we shared with the CTA about our renewable diesel program, and that's kind of caught on. Now we have a bunch of other agencies and other businesses that have adopted that. So similar to that, we want to just make sure everybody has access to all of these programs and policies readily available. And then a lot of great regional project updates were provided. Some of them, all of them can be found on the notes that are on the website. And then there's some events that, one of which the town manager already talked about, the Air They Breathe, which is tomorrow night here in council chambers. Also tomorrow, though, from noon to 1 is How to Electrify Buildings in the Truckee Tahoe area, presented by Peninsula Clean Energy and one of our local citizens, Blake Hershaft. And then finally, the California Fifth Climate Assessment will be on October 30th from noon to 1. And all of these webinars can be found at climatetransformationalliance.com under the meetings tab.
Thank you. Councilmember Remek.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, last week attended the League of California Cities annual conference with town manager Jen Calloway, which to say she's kind of like a celebrity. We would be walking in the hallway. She just knows a ton of people from lots of different other cities around the state. So I think that shows we're in good hands. We were just talking about capacity issues. One of the most interesting sessions that I went in, listened to was a lot about funding limitations coming forward. And it had a lot to do with how right now we get a lot of our funding for transportation and roads from gas taxes. And as we are, I think we're all aware, but as we're moving towards zero emission vehicles and more fuel efficient ICE vehicles, new term, internal combustion engines, that's how they were referring to them. We're going to see a decrease in funding for our roads and for our transportation system. They showed one chart where if we're not even as aggressive in our climate goals in the state as we want to be, currently this year, there was about $4 billion that went to local entities for roads through one of the mechanisms. In 9 years, we'll see $3 billion. So a $1 billion increase in 9 years when everything's going to cost more. So a lot of conversations about that, and Caltrans looking at, different modeling and how to look at different funding, but I think something for us to be aware of funding limitations and ways we can bring in other funding. Great conversation on e-bikes that I mentioned earlier with some ideas from other entities and how they deal with e-bike issues. Also on electric vehicles and maybe ways we can access some additional data of how many electric vehicles are in specific communities that could help us with planning for chargers and things like that, which I know is something we've been talking about. There was also a great keynote speaker about how we listen to each other better and active listening, and how so often in conversations we're ready to jump in with what our thought is rather than listening. So I think just always important for all of us. Anyway, great conference. I would recommend it. I think Councilmember Henderson has been to it before, maybe Councilmember Klövstad. It's going to be in Long Beach again next year in October, and I would recommend if people are available to go. I found it very worthwhile. Back here locally, have attended a lot of the great fall events, because fall is definitely the season of events. The Tahoe Donner Fall Fest, I think Councilmember Henderson, I did see you on crutches there. Big Truck Day, we were there before it opened till after it closed. When you have a 4-year-old boy, we had to do everything a million times. So thank you to the Truckee Donner Rec and Park District, our town team, and everyone else who helped put on the event. It was fantastic. Attended Sierra Community House's annual chocolate and wine fundraiser, great event. And then also Truckee River Day, planted trees in Tahoe Donner, some new red firs, so that was really fun. And then the final thing, on Sunday, people in my neighborhood, we held a voting party, and this was an incredible just opportunity to see democracy in action and civil conversations. It was where everybody who attended got a different proposition, state election, local election, and had 5 minutes to present on it and pros and cons, and then their recommendations, and then we would all discuss it afterwards. And just, it would be great to see more of that happen, I think, sometimes, rather than, online bashing and whatnot. So just wanted to highlight it was a great community event and an opportunity for lots of people to share different points of view. So thank you to all those that attended, and I think it's a great idea for 2 years from now, see if we can do more of those. That's it.
And to make sure everybody gets out and votes and gets their ballots in. Quickly for me, visit Truckee Tahoe board meeting. We allocated or approved our event budget for 24-25, just 3 events. Truckee Tahoe Gravel will be coming back at the end of June, Lake Tahoe Summit Lacrosse Tournament, and then the US ASA Futures Tour, which is actually an event that takes place at North Star, but they will be moving it to Donner Summit, hopefully within 2 years, but all pretty minor request, $65,000 for all of those special events combined. And then the Visit Truckee Tahoe is also convening a sort of side property manager / short-term rental information group to start the process of understanding some of the constraints, some of the opportunities around the short-term rental program, and so that they can be prepared to be informed as that process decides to unravel in the next year and a half or so, but mostly starting to just collect information and get some feedback. And then VTT is also on target for a T-bid renewal in the next 6 months or so. So that'll be a big lift from that organization. The only other real highlight was we entertained a 6th grade class from T here in council chambers. I do want to thank Sarah and Kelly and Andrea and Laurel, because they really kind of ran the show. These kids they were here for a couple of hours. We did a mock council meeting, and the agenda, and they had staff, and they elected 5 council members, including a mayor, and they had public commenters, and they had a translator, which was really kind of a really cool experience. And those guys put this whole thing together, and their agenda item, which I thought you guys would all really enjoy, was staff was recommending that every student should be able to have a pet in class, a dog specifically in class on the daily basis. And they debated the pros and cons and the budgetary issues around it. It was pretty hilarious to watch them and try to control each other and be council members and impartial staff members and not have opinions and all of these other things. So it was great. Anyway, that's all from me. I think we are adjourned to closed session. We have item 9.1, public employee performance evaluation. We will open public comment on closed session. Any public comment on closed session? Closing public comment. Good night and thank you. We'll see you all next meeting, November 12th.